I'm about to compile over 2 hours of my best videos that would be perfect to enjoy on a nice sunny day. Or if you don't touch grass, which let's be honest is pretty likely if you're watching this video, you can still enjoy this too. Starting off by going over the age-old question, how old is every character in Gumball? Well, today we're gonna find it out, as some characters literally have multiple ages, along with some characters looking way older than they are. Starting all the way down with the youngest characters. First, we have Anton, which might confuse you because he's in Gumball's class. So how could he be 0? Well, that's because he's always being reborn. Clearly, this may sound confusing, so let me explain. Basically, Anton is a piece of toast, and in the show, it's a running gag that something always ends up happening to Anton, which leads him to die due to how vulnerable he is to dying. However, he's always somehow reborn, and we see this in huge effect in the episode The Recipe, where Gumball clones Anton hundreds of times, which proves how easy it is for Anton to be reborn.
No, dude, he came back to life, and I'm gonna find out how. Quick, come with us, Anton, we'll protect you!
This means that he technically doesn't age in years due to how much he's constantly dying and getting reborn, meaning that he's 0 years old, being the youngest character in Gumball in quite the odd way. However, the youngest character who's actually lived for years that we've seen play a role in Gumball is Penny's younger sister, Polly Fitzgerald. Now, in the show, Polly is shown to be a toddler, judging by the way she acts, and her limited verbal abilities, which we see a lot in one of her only major roles in the show, which was in The Mess.
Oh, we're fine. Where's the little peanut?
I made you a picture.
Aw, thank you. What is it?
It's Bigfoot.
So it is.
Now, taking all of this into consideration, we can most likely assume that she's 2 years old, as she's clearly able to walk and talk. However, she is very small and obviously doesn't speak much, so 2 years old is the perfect age to meet in the middle for Polly, hence why the official Gumball wiki also states that she's 2 years old. Now, while Polly's age isn't exactly confirmed, but very likely, Anais's age is the first confirmed age we're gonna see in this video, and if you don't already know, Anais is the ridiculously smart little sister of Gumball and Darwin, and she is clearly smaller than Gumball and Darwin, and has much more of a younger voice to her, which already gives off hints that she's very young. However, this age is strictly confirmed, as the creators of Gumball themselves have actually confirmed it, as in the default description of every YouTube video they post on the official channel, they specify that Anais is 4 years old. Billy's age, on the other hand, isn't, but it's pretty easy to guess. Billy is the son of Felicity Parham, who is essentially the Karen in the Gumball universe. And while we mostly see him as a background character in a lot of episodes, we see him play a few major roles, such as his first real role, which was in The Egg. In this episode, we would see Billy meet the Watersons, and actually spark an interest in Anais, as Nicole would set up a playdate with both of them.
Mother, these people scare me so. Pray tell, which is to be my playdate?
Billy, please meet my daughter Anais.
Playdate?
Yes, playdate.
Now, in the playdate, Billy and Anais would actually get along really well, and we would start seeing that Billy is essentially a boy version of Anais, as he's clearly a little boy who's also very smart, and their super close relationship is what led everyone to assume that he's most likely 4 years old, as out of any other young age, 4 years old simply makes the most sense, hence why this just became an unofficial but official age for Billy on the wiki. Now, on to the next character, who's actually 6 years old. However, this character is one that all of you may have totally forgotten about, and that character is Chris Morris, the Elmore Junior High school hamster, and we would see him first appear in the episode The Burden, where it's revealed that he's been trapped in his cage for 6 years, ever since he was born.
Oh, come on, this hamster's so old it should be classified as a mineral. I don't want to be the kid responsible for him when he turns into dust.
Well, I'm afraid it wasn't a request. It's an order. He's been in this cage since he was born, 6 long years ago. So please take extremely good extremely good care of him.
Clearly, these 6 years have not been nice to Bro, but thankfully, he finally got set free at the end of the episode. But unfortunately, we have to skip a few years all the way over to 10 years old, as at the 10 spot, we have one of our fan favorites, my boy Darwin. Now, Darwin is 10 years old, as it has been confirmed in multiple episodes, but I have even better proof, as back in May of 2013, we would see Ben Boclet, the creator of the show, reply to a fan on Twitter confirming that Darwin is 10. Now, while a lot of you probably don't mind this age, some of you actually question how Darwin is in Elmore Junior High at 10 years old, due to the fact that he isn't some genius like Anais, and acts like a normal 10-year-old with common sense. All of this has led people to theorize that Darwin might be in the same grade as Gumball due to how close they are, forcing Nicole to get them in the same class. Why is Darwin in the same grade as Gumball if he's 2 years younger than him? Are there any theories? My theory is that since Gumball and Darwin are so close to each other, Nicole and Richard were forced to put Gumball and Darwin in the same grade together. But honestly, who knows, as stuff like this basically never gets confirmed in the show. However, next up, coming in at 12 years old, is none other than Darwin's big brother, Gumball. Now, just like Darwin, Gumball has said multiple times throughout the show that he's 12 years old, along with Ben also confirming it. But one example we would see Gumball confirm this in is in the kids.
I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, dude, I've been 12 for like forever now.
I think we can safely say that we'll be young forever.
Now, Gumball's was pretty self-explanatory, but we aren't done with the age 12 yet, as another character who's also 12 years old is Gumball's girlfriend, Penny. Now, obviously, it only makes sense for Penny to be the same age as Gumball, which is why we see the writers confirm this in The Bros, where Penny tells Gumball that they're only 12, so they can't get married.
Marry me.
Oh, Gumball, I can't.
Why?
We're 12 years old.
Age doesn't matter when it comes to love.
Legally, it kinda does.
But now that we've also talked about Penny, let's mention how a lot of Gumball's classmates are also 12 due to them being in the same grade. Some of those characters are Banana Joe, Tobias, Terry, Alan, and Carrie? Yeah, Carrie's is a bit confusing, and I know this video is only ages 1 to 100, but I had to mention this. Now, as we all know, Carrie is technically 12, as she's in the same class as Gumball, but she might actually be over 327 years old, as she's a full-on ghost, which we would see her reveal in the drama.
Wait, how old are you exactly?
I'm 327 years old.
Oh no, the age difference is gonna tear them apart like a dysfunctional family on a camping trip.
Yeah, this is probably the weirdest stage in this video. However, things are about to start getting more difficult, as now we basically have all of the easy ages out of the way, and from here, the ages are gonna start getting a bit harder to find, and we're gonna see way more age gaps. But coming in at 13, we have Jamie. Now, while this age isn't 100% confirmed for Jamie, we get confirmation in page 42 of the Amazing World of Gumball Bible that Jamie was held back 1 year by Miss Simeon, which would most likely mean that she's around 13 years old. But we aren't done with the people who often bully others in Elmore Junior High, as we see Tina Rex come in at the 14 years old spot. Now, as we all know, Tina's in the same class as Gumball and Darwin, being 14. But just like Jamie, this means that Tina most likely got held back a year. And we get even more confirmation that she's 14 in a YouTube video from all the way back in 2012 titled Tina's Date. And in the video, we see an infographic confirming that she's 14 years old. So yeah, we clearly had to dig pretty deep to find this one. However, thankfully we keep the flow going in order again, as we have Rachel Wilson at the 15 years old spot. Now Rachel is the older sister of Tobias, and we would see her have one major role in the show, and that was all the way back in season 1 in The Party. Now in this episode, we would see Rachel act like your typical older sibling, and act superior over all of Tobias's friends, calling them his dweeb loser baby friends, hence why the wiki assumed that she's 15 years old. And to extend on this even more, believe it or not, we would actually see Rachel's canonical age, which is one of the only characters in the show who would do this. And we know this because we would get the confirmation that she left for college in Darwin's yearbook.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask. What happened to your sister Rachel?
Oh, she's gone.
Gone? Like, Gone the way of the dinosaur?
No, gone to college, obviously. Anyway, cool party, right?
Now, considering that she was 15 back during 2011 during season 1, she was most likely around 23 in 2019 when Darwin's yearbook released, which does make sense as a lot of people in this age group are usually in college, but obviously we're basing it off her appearances in the show, so she's basically 15. But things are really starting to get wild now, as we don't actually see any characters ages 16 through 26 in Gumball, which means we're jumping all the way to age 27, where we see Rocky hanging out in. Now, Rocky has been said to be different ages, however, the only confirmed age that we've seen him be is 27 years old, which we would see Gumball mention in the mystery.
Why me?
Well, yesterday you were wandering around when suddenly, at the age of 27, you realized your youth was behind you.
Oh.
Then all your hair fell out.
Now, this age for Rocky was honestly expected. However, let's just say that at age 28, we see someone that none of you expected to be 28. And trust me, it's a rough 28. And this character is none other than Miss Yoda Thumb, which is crazy because if anything, she looks like she's in her mid-70s. However, in the singing, we get the confirmation that she is 28 years old, despite how old she looks.
My face looks a state, though I've only just turned 28. Still I'm singing.
Clearly, this age is the most shocking one in this video by far, and if Miss Yoda Thumb wasn't joking, the years were definitely not nice to her. However, after this, we take a small leap over to the mid-30s, for ages 34 through 35. As for ages 34 through 35, we see Johnny Toucan be in this category. Now, a lot of you probably don't even know who this character is, and this is most likely due to the fact that he only appeared one time in Gumball history, and that was in the season 7 episode, The Portrait. And in this episode, we find out that Johnny is Mary's new, younger yoga instructor boyfriend after divorcing Daniel. And it's also revealed that Johnny was a freshman in high school when Nicole was a senior, which reveals that he's most likely around 34 to 35 years old due to the fact that Nicole is 38. So based on the age gap of the grade levels, it only makes sense.
This isn't happening.
You remember Johnny Toucan, right, honey?
Hey, Nicole, haven't seen you since senior year.
Yeah, when you were a freshman.
Well, it takes two can to tango.
So yeah, this character is clearly more on the forgotten side in Gumball. However, we of course still had to include him in here. But speaking of Nicole, we see both her and Richard coming in at 38 years old. Now obviously, it only makes sense if Richard and Nicole were both 38, as they both met when they were kids. As seen in the choices, they seem to be around the same age, which we would actually see the creator of Gumball, Ben Boclet, yet again confirm on Twitter by replying to a fan that Richard and Nicole are both 38 years old in his mind, and even mentions how he feels like Richard and Nicole's marriage feels like a shotgun sort of marriage. Clearly, both Nicole and Richard are sitting in the middle area between young and old, but the same can't be said for Mr. Small on the other hand, and bro is approaching the old ages due to the fact that he is 40 years old. Now, we know that Mr. Small is 40 due to a handy dandy flashback we would see from Nicole in the G, where we would see that Mr. Small used to make fun of Richard's cottontail cavalier costume back in middle school.
Costume geek!
Leave him alone! At least he's brave enough to be himself.
Now seeing that, Richard would crash into another classroom that young Patrick, young Sal Left Thumb, and young Mr. Small were in, and we can assume that they were probably a grade or so above Richard, making Mr. Small around 40 years old, which would become sort of official on the wiki. And this actually leads us perfectly into age 42, which we would see Patrick Fitzgerald be in, aka one of Mr. Small's childhood friends. Now, there have never actually been any leads on Patrick's age, and the reason why he's 42 is because the wiki claims that he's 42, and we can most likely assume that they claim this due to what I was just talking about, which was how Patrick, Mr. Small, and Sal Left Thumb were all in middle school at the same time, and thanks to this flashback, we can make the assumption that Patrick is 42. But again, these two ages we've gone over are essentially just speculation, as we only have one singular flashback helping us out with this. But unfortunately, the evidence and overall leads don't become any better, here, as after 42 years old, we skip all the way over to age 50, where we got Principal Brown. Now, for Principal Brown, things get really bad, as this age, along with the next few, are going to be pure speculation, as the evidence we have is very little, such as the middle school flashback from when Principal Brown was a kid in the butts, where we see the school superintendent, Quattro Pepperoni, and a few more adults in the show appearing as kids bullying Principal Brown.
What's up with that? Why's your crack so short, bro? Does it whistle when you chew? Guys, look at this! It looks like an egg with a cleft chin!
And clearly, this doesn't give any real leads on Principal Brown's age, and the wiki age is likely just speculation, most likely judging by how Principal Brown acts, along with his love interests. I mean, he's into a woman that is millions of years old, and Principal Brown's overall maturity just gives off the 50-year-old type of vibes, but hopefully we get a real confirmation of his age once season 9 comes out in the future, so we don't have to speculate so much. But this isn't the only 50-year-old that we see in the show, as Mr. Robinson is also 50 years old, which we see Anais reveal in the Poltergeist, stating that they trapped a 50-year-old man in the attic.
Unlimited beverages and a queen-size bed.
You do realize what keeping a 50-year-old man in these conditions is called? Love? Kidnapping.
But we aren't done with the Robinsons yet, as we skip all the way over to age 58, where we see one of the most evil characters in the show, Mrs. Robinson. Now, obviously, Mrs. Robinson literally speaks her own little language in every episode, as all she says is which clearly shows that she most definitely has never revealed her age before, at least in common English. However, we can speculate that she's 58 due to her physical appearances and childhood flashbacks yet again. Now, one of the reasons why people speculate that she's 58 is due to the fact that over time, her hair has looked way more gray in later seasons, which definitely hints at her being on the older side, along with some baby pictures that we would see of her in The Wicked, as the baby picture of her from when she was born is literally in black and white.
Wait a minute, what about the baby pictures? They gotta be cute. Aww.
Now, judging the fact that most characters in Gumball don't truly age up in years throughout the show, we can assume that she was already 58 in 2011 when the show was released, meaning that she was born in 1953. And as we all know, black and white pictures were really common in this year, which makes sense as to why her baby pictures would be in black and white. But overall, this is just a bunch of speculation, and thankfully that ends at age 63, where we see Granny JoJo at. Now, Granny JoJo is obviously Richard's mom, along with Gumball, Darwin, and Anais's grandmother. And we see her confirm that she's 63 years old in The Man, where she confirms that she's 63 after they literally put more than 63 candles on her cake.
Happy birthday! Come on, Granny JoJo, blow out your candles.
Yeah, I prefer my face medium rare, not char-grilled.
Why are there so many candles? I'm only 63.
Sorry, we didn't know exactly how old you were, so we based it on looks.
Clearly, she's a pretty normal age for a grandma, but right after Granny JoJo, we once again skip over a few years to age 72, where we see Granny JoJo's husband, Louis Watterson. Now, we would see Louis confirm his age in the signature, where we would see some really weird sequences, from seeing the family literally adopt each other to seeing Richard's biological father. But in the middle of the madness, we would see Louis confirm that he's 72 years old, after Richard literally tries sending him to bed.
How dare you! You should be ashamed!
Tut, tut, tut. I think it's time to go to bed, son.
Are you kidding me? I'm a 72-year-old man!
Yeah, Louis is pretty old. However, now we're finally at the point where we've met the oldest character in Gumball, and that is actually Marvin Fickelheimer, who is in his 80s. Now, the reason we don't know the precise age is due to the fact that in the watch, we see Hank, another old guy, call Marvin an octogenarian, which is a term for people between the ages of 80 and 89.
What are you doing ramming into an octogenarian in a battery-powered wheelchair?
Yeah, fair point.
Well, those were all of the Gumball characters' ages from 1 to 100. If I missed any characters' ages or got anything wrong, make sure to leave it in the comments below, as this one was actually surprisingly tricky to research. With how inconsistent the amazing world of Gumball can be, the exact layout of Elmore is hard to pin down on a map. at least accurately, which is exactly what we're going to be solving today, going location by location, along with also breaking down the history behind each place, starting off with the Wattersons' house. Now, it's no secret that there's an actual house in real life that served as the inspiration for the Blue family house. It's located at 1026 York Street, Vallejo, California. In fact, the entirety of Elmore takes its blueprint from the city in Vallejo. Doesn't it already remind you of Elmore? Gumball's house is just a bit south of the town center, and as we know, right next to the Robinson family. Up the same street, we have Gary Hedges, the elderly neighbor next to the main characters. Now, there's a few problems with this house, mainly that the layout doesn't make any sense. Like, how does that roof even make sense when the walls inside are perfectly square? But more importantly, this house has gone through every disaster imaginable. It's been possessed by spirits, blown up multiple times, and swallowed by the void. But that's not even the start of it. The house got a brief redesign made of crystals in the Saint, and has even changed its location. Like when it was taken away when the Wattersons ran out of money, and when a couple construction workers literally just took it away by accident. But the next location we're going to be looking at is Elmore Junior High, which is to the north of the Wattersons' house. Now, Elmore Junior High also has a real-life inspiration, which is called the Lincoln High School in San Francisco. It takes the Wattersons varying times to get to school, but if Vallejo says anything, it'll take them about 20 minutes to get there. If you know the public schools in the US, you know it's surprising that Elmore Junior High has its own cheerleading squad, marching band, indoor swimming pool, and track and field stadium. No wonder they ran out of funds. It's attended by students of all shapes, colors, and sizes. Most of them attend Miss Simeon's class, where all of the teaching happens for the Watterson brothers. Anais, of course, is a grade above them. But now, let's move on to where all of the characters go after all of the traumatic moments in the show. Towards the left of the school, we have the Elmore General Hospital, giving only the finest care for the residents of Elmore. Whether you're a half-eaten toast or a cut-up banana, this place promises to turn all those frowns into smiles. But what happens here, to put it lightly, is quite the opposite. The staff here include a bunch of bandages and Dr. Butt. He first appears in The Goons, and Gumball mistook him for Richard's behind. I don't blame him. To top it all off, they clearly don't have enough people around to keep an eye on what's actually going on inside the hospital. Gumball and Darwin managed to conduct a whole operation on Alan in the episode The Traitor. All the hospital got to save Alan was one bandage guy looking in and then completely disappearing. This isn't even a one-time thing. Turns out, in the world of Elmore, if you come to the hospital for a problem, you're likely gonna leave with even more problems. It's just better not to come at all. But now, let's go to the more finer things that Elmore has to offer. Behind the fantastic hospital, we have all kinds of things that makes living fun. First, when it comes to food options in Elmore, there are many branches of Joyful Burger, and Larry works in every single one of them. There's also Lazy Larry, another restaurant with only one known location. Bobbert's store, where Bobberts are manufactured, is right behind Lazy Larry. It made a one-time appearance in the episode The Upgrade, but I don't know if I'd call it a store because the walls are literally white and there are no floors or ceilings in sight, and even Gumball and Darwin have a hard time navigating the place. Next to Bobbert's factory, we have Elmore Shopping for all your daily needs, or where Nicole realizes just how little she's paid.
Why can't we just have one treat?
Because it's the end of the month and I work a dead-end job where I get paid peanuts. That's not a figure of speech, by the way.
Then why are we even here?
This one is the Little Plaza location, and there's another one inside the Elmore Mall. It's your classic general store, at least when the Wattersons are not there. The Plaza location is also shared by other stores, especially a sports center for the health nuts, and Burger Burg right next to it to keep it in business. But back to Elmore Shopping, its major appearance was in the episode The Limit. Anais even laid out all of the marketing strategies in the store, but even her smarts couldn't save them from pushing Nicole too far, and what followed can only be called doomsday. It ended with the entire store taking a big hit. Luckily, the reset between episodes makes the store stand even after this. But now let's move on to the coolest place in all of Elmore, Elmore Mall. This is where all the residents of Elmore shop until they drop. From romantic dates to full-blown arch nemesis wars, this place has seen it all. But before we get there, we need to park. And for that, the mall is a huge parking garage, complete with multiple levels. But even that doesn't guarantee that the Wattersons won't get into trouble. Anyways, inside the mall has a grand exterior, and like the garage, has multiple floors. The diner is where Gumball and Penny can be spotted having one of their cute dates. But there's also a branch of the Joyful Burger. For all general purposes, there's another branch of Elmore Shopping, along with a Ripley 2000 and Laser Video for all of the Wattersons' antics. There's even an arcade and a cinema to fuel them even more. And it's all run by poor Larry, who has to put up with all of it. There's a tattoo parlor, a salon, and a store for everything you can think of, from flowers to hardware. It's also where Sussy's family business, Sussy's Shoes, can be found. This mall has had a flash mob and has even witnessed Gumball naked. But most importantly, it was the site where Gumball and Rob had their biggest fight before the events of the Inquisition. The disaster was the first part of this saga, and it starts with Rob getting an all-powerful remote. It literally could make him time travel. And of course, he wasn't gonna let this opportunity go. Naturally, he decided to mess with his arch nemesis, Gumball, and his family. Soon enough, Rob finally revealed himself and the remote, and it led to a legendary fight, and the showrunners really decided to leave season 4 with Gumball pressing the rewind button. But in the next season, in the episode The Rerun, Gumball gets a second chance, and through his lovable nature, he convinces Rob to destroy the remote. And this is after his parents turned into babies, and his sister disappeared from existence at one point. But now we're moving on to where all of the work takes place, Elmore Businesses. The other side of town, opposite to the Elmore Mall, is where almost everyone in Elmore works. There are 3 main businesses in Elmore: the Rainbow Factory, Chanex Inc., and Fitzgerald Co. That's not counting the coalition of really useful people company that Darwin wanted. The Rainbow Factory is where Nicole works, and it provides what little money the family has. It's owned by Mr. Yoshida, who is the husband of Yuki. Because of their rivalry, Yuki doesn't even let Nicole work in peace, and often just comes by to get in her face. Maybe that's the reason why Nicole doesn't ever get a promotion, even after working for all these years at the complaints department. Apart from Nicole, Karen, who is the fiance of Larry, and Mr. Cooper, who is the father of Claire, also works here. A crumpled up paper character, who is apparently called the newspaper employee, can also be seen carrying stacks of paper twice his height. Contrary to popular belief, until season 6, working at the Rainbow Factory was anything but sunshine and rainbows. In fact, Nicole finds it easier to repaint her face just to hide her tiredness. And during the episode The Factory, Gumball and Darwin visit their mother's workplace on the same day that the fate of the factory was being decided, and all the shareholders cared about was money and productivity. But where the Watterson brothers go, trouble follows, and this day was no different. The factory goes into full panic mode and starts filling up with toxic gas, but this seemed to be exactly what the shareholders needed to have. Some sense knocked into them. Gumball and Darwin became heroes for the workers of the Rainbow Factory, as color came back to everyone in the building. But one place that never got color was Charnax Inc. It's named after Mr. Charnax, who is an alter ego of Paperball, and the former owner of the company. What the company actually does, no one knows. But Rocky says that it's pure evil, as they cut down rainforest, contributed to pollution, invented boy bands, and according to Gumball, invented cheese puffs. In the episode The Founder, it reveals that the company is also a cable service provider. The building itself is several stories high, and people enter or exit through sliding glass doors, with the elevators being big enough to hold the Wattersons' car. In The Boss, the building's true personality came out. In addition to the conference room and waiting room, there is a compartment filled with so much paperwork that it's deep enough to cause a paper avalanche that can crush anyone who dares to pass by. The filing cabinets have life, and they've actually tried to crush Gumball, Darwin, and Rocky. The office of the owner is located at the highest level of the building, on the 99th floor. According to The Boss, Gumball, Darwin, and Rocky were the first people to ever make it there.
You were the first people to ever make it to this office. Congratulations.
Getting a job here isn't easy, as according to Paperball, the company wants employees who are young, fresh, and gullible. Immediately after they're accepted, the employee must sign a legal contract, where they sign away their hopes and dreams. This signing is the final act of complete manipulation and physical possession by Mr. Chanex, making the employees soullessly work like puppets at the company. After the contract is signed, the employee must exhale into a jar, so that the company can forever keep the possession of the employee's spirit. It's revealed that an employee's breath in a jar does not actually give any spirits of their essence to Mr. Chanex. According to the soulless office worker, the occupation mostly lasts for a full lifetime, to the point where the employees miss their family moments and even their own retirement. But there's a good side of Chanex, where there are people who actually work more normally. The only downside is they don't know what they actually work as. Despite all of this, Gumball and Darwin had short-lived jobs in this place, with Richard even being mistaken as the long-lost CEO and the founder. His shenanigans went so badly that in the episode, the entire building exploded by the end of it. And last but not least, for the industrial side of Elmore, we have Fitzgerald Co. Limited. This company is a construction company ran and owned by Patrick Fitzgerald, Penny's father. And it's safe to say that most of the construction in Elmore is taken care of by Patrick, as he did pitch in $1 million deal with Chanex Inc. in The Apprentice, showing that he can take on that kind of work. The most interesting part of the company is that there are 3 men who work for it: Hank, George, and Steve, who are so clumsy that they are better as destroyers than construction workers. If there's anything worse than their clumsiness, it's their manners. But Patrick somehow stays in business, even when Hank's colorblindness has literally caused them to relocate the Wattersons family home. But now, all of these people need to be paid, and that's where we come to the Central Bank of Elmore. This bank actually has an address that's mentioned in the show, and it's located at 123 Swerks Avenue, as revealed in The Heist. The real-life building is located in Washington, D.C. The Wattersons have both stopped robberies as well as committed them. While Nicole stopped a heist in The Fury, Richard went on the opposite end of the spectrum in The Heist. The episode starts kinda innocent, with Richard getting stuck in a motorcycle helmet, but life must go on, and Richard somehow manages to drive a car to the Bank of Elmore. And there's no protocol for entering a high-security bank with a cool helmet, and Richard manages to literally walk out with brown bags filled with cash, and Larry gets arrested for all his trouble. After literally locking the town down, Richard comes to realize that he's stolen $2 million, and now they have to return it, Watterson style. In the end, Elmore's economy got cooked, but at least nobody was arrested. We're only halfway through our tour, and there's still a lot more interesting locations in town, with the Void literally in the middle of town, and the Forest of Doom still on the list. But before we get there, we need to move on to where people go when there's a certain family who keeps destroying the whole town, the City Hall. Every town needs one, and this City Hall is modeled after the Town Hall of Worthington in West Sussex, England. In the safety, there's a motto printed above the entrance reading Pro Salute Hominum, which in Latin means for the safety of all. Even though people tried coming here to complain to the mayor about the Wattersons, it didn't stop them even converting it into their own lair, like dictator Darwin did. The hall is famously featured in 2 episodes. First is in The Signature, where the family comes here to obtain a marriage license for the grandparents, so that Frankie wouldn't steal the family house. And the most important of all, it was featured in The Nuisance. It literally starts with an invitation for the family to the City Hall for a surprise. And boy, were they in for one. And that's what it took for the family to realize how much crime they've been committing. The family then tried to compensate for all of the damage by being unnaturally nice to everyone. But of course, it was bound to end in disaster. And this is the point where the mayor decided to reveal his evil plan.
Whereas I wanted you out because you were bringing the price of the neighborhood down. That was a problem, you see, when I decided to sell the land to developers. But look at you now, you've become our new poster family.
Maybe the City Hall was made to be an evil lair, but the good Wattersons stepped in, became their usual destroying selves, and restored peace. Now we can move on from all things business and move to the place that started it all, Elmore Local Park, which is right behind City Hall. This park is every suburban mom's dream, made up of open fields, ponds, a playground, a skate park, and long walking paths. According to the credits, in real life it's Hyde Park. Located in London, and Hempstead Heath was also used on occasion. Compilation. This was the setting for the dumb race in the episode The Goons, which was really just sibling rivalry at its peak. For once, Anais is jealous of the games that her brothers play and decides to learn how to be dumb. Once Anais learns, she starts replicating Gumball in all of their games, and he obviously didn't take it too well. And so the dumb race was born. It ended with most of them in the hospital, but at least Gumball and Anais made up. But that's the only competition that happened. Marvin and Gumball had their big showdown over their old family feud in the episode The Watch. But there's a way more important event that happened in the park. In the episode The Choices, an overstimulated Nicole wonders how things would have gone if she made different choices in the past. And that's where we get to this cute moment.
So, people will like me?
But lots of people already like you.
Really? Like who?
This singular moment was very important for Nicole, as this is what led to her breaking out of the cage that her parents put her in, and she finally took control of her life. And together, they built the family that we've all come to love. But Elmore is more weird than that, and we're heading next to where some people keep their dead relatives, the Elmore Museum. You would think that a museum has no place in a show like Gumball, unless they wanted to bore kids to death. But this little museum has a little secret, and for that, we need to go to the episode The Apology. It starts with Miss Simeon having a wardrobe malfunction, and the Watterson brothers end up in the principal's office for trying to tell her. But Miss Simeon takes it so personally that she takes it upon herself to prove that the brothers were bad kids. But Gumball and Darwin, through literal stupidity, managed to wiggle themselves out of any trap she laid for them. And this is where Miss Simeon decides to go to the only place where she could get advice, Elmore Museum. Apparently, Miss Simeon's dad is literally fossilized and kept on display for everyone to see, and she doesn't have a problem with it. In fact, she sings right in front of him in the compilation. Apart from this, a dinosaur skeleton is seen hanging up in the slip. In real life, it's the Natural History Museum located in London. Now, let's go to a location where an epic showdown took place, Richmond High, which is behind the museum. This school is special because all of its students are entirely humans, with Sarah being the only exception. Another strange aspect is that the town seems to be drawn, unlike the other locations in the show, which use real-life backgrounds. This applies not just to the buildings, but all places visible while in it, including the sky. The most important place in here is the stadium, and it made its first appearance in the sweaters. The episode starts with finding out that Elmore Junior High has a hardcore reputation in other schools, including Richwood. In fact, two students, Carlton and Troy, came with an interesting offer.
Absolutely nothing, dude.
Sounds to me like you want to fight, Dweebazoid.
Okay, I don't know what kind of movie you're living in, but I don't want to be in it.
The brothers are so unimpressed that they literally just walk away. But Richwood doesn't back off that easily, not even the teachers. Finally, it reaches its peak when Carlton threatens to have his father demolish Elmore Junior High to build a golf course if Gumball does not show up for the fight. But the fight wasn't something the brothers had in mind. In the end, even though they lost miserably, they managed to gain respect of the students for the courage to come back to the court no matter what. But now it's time for us to go beyond the town to Anais's favorite place, Daisyland. This place was one of the most heartbreaking closures of any location in the amazing world of Gumball. It happens in one of the first episodes of the new show called The Traffic. It starts with a family emergency meeting where Nicole reveals that the park has a class action lawsuit against it and that they're going immediately to the park. And on the car ride there, Anais is actually kind enough to walk us through the map of Daisyland. There's only one small problem. Nicole had asked to get the car fixed, and let's just say that Richard did it in a way only he can do. Of course, this led to more problems, and finally, they got stuck on the side of the road. And no one was willing to help them back into traffic, with the brothers making even more of a mess. So Nicole tried to fix everything, only to be stopped by Donut Cop. Anais accepted that she wouldn't get to see her favorite park anymore, and that was the fuel that the Watterson family needed to go full Super Saiyan mode. After all of that, Anais got to go on rides of her own and had a heartfelt moment of a lifetime. Next, we head up north for the most depressing place in Elmore, Elmore Cemetery. This is where Carrie lives, in a haunted house next to the cemetery. The entire setting first appeared in the Halloween, where Carrie invited the brothers for a Halloween party, and they decided to go through the cemetery. But Anais was obviously too young, and so Gumball did what any good brother would do.
You're just gonna have to hang out here.
Well, at least it can't get any worse.
Once that was taken care of, Carrie invited them in and told them that they had to drink a potion in order to see the others who came to attend the party. The boys drink it anyway, and that's when the other residents at the cemetery came into the light. Black magic is right at home at this place, as when the brothers drank the whole bottle, they actually turned into ghosts. Luckily, after they had their fun, they were able to get back into their bodies before they became a part of the underworld at the cemetery. Next on our list is the Forest of Doom, and it's fittingly right next to the underworld. The Forest of Doom is located in what appears to be a large park in Elmore. When viewed from far above in the trees, it looks exactly like a human skull. It's also known to be very dark, even when it's sunny outside, probably since the trees are so tall and thick that they block the sunlight. The forest is bigger than it looks from the outside, with a cliff in the middle of it, and with all of this, it's no surprise that it's also easy to get lost in. It's home to a variety of creepy plants and animals. There are literally trees with snarling faces, monstrous squirrels, horrible chicken deer hybrids, and possibly a lot more than Gumball and Darwin were fortunate enough to avoid. Though their size varies, they almost all seem to be aggressive, but some are intelligent enough to be able to talk. We first hear this lore in The Picnic, and it sounds like a scary story parents tell misbehaving kids. With that fatal mistake, now they're on their own to find the picnic area, and of course, they went through the forest. This is where Gumball and Darwin really understand what they got themselves into. After running around a bit, Darwin manages to calm down the predators to save Gumball, and somehow makes it back to the picnic area in one piece. The only family that doesn't seem scared to death about the place is the Fitzgeralds. Penny finds herself here more times than I can count, but she also turns into a dragon, so that probably helps things. Beyond this, you'll find the Elmore Zoo, where Larry once created a mutant, and the Elmore River. Towards the right of the river are the dry terrain we see in the Origins, when Darwin crosses them to get to Elmore, closely followed by the ocean. The only other place of interest is the junkyard, which is south of the town. The Elmore junkyard is where everyone throws their waste away and just forgets about it. It also has an incinerator in the middle for the waste to be slowly burned, but there's so much waste that it seems that the incinerator will never finish its job. For a junkyard, this place has a lot going on. For one, Tina Rex and her father live here, while Richard considers it the best place to get clothes.
Here we are, the greatest department store in the world, where everything is free!
It made some important moments, like when the Watterson kids came to get Daisy the donkey from Tina in the quest, but their quest wasn't quite successful, mostly because they got distracted. And of course, eventually they woke Tina up, and boy, she was mad. But in the end, after seeing how much Tina loved Daisy, Anais decided to leave her toy with the T-Rex. The junkyard makes another appearance in the helmet, where the Watterson children come to destroy the all-powerful helmet. Now, there's just one more stop at the end of our tour. Right in the middle of this slightly unhinged town is something straight out of an existential crisis, the void. Over the course of the world's history, whenever a person or an object is considered a mistake, it'll be discarded from reality and end up in the void. Sometimes when a person is sent to the void, they will be frozen in time like a paused video, but they can be broken out of it if someone touches them. The void has static TV as its background, and the laws of physics are warped with outer space gravity. The mistakes sent to the void are almost always floating all around it, unless they're standing on a platform. What's worse is that they can sometimes be seen glitching or phasing in and out of reality. Once a mistake is sent to the void, all evidence that it ever existed is removed from the real world. Everyone's memory of that mistake is erased. The only way to save the memory is if someone wears a tinfoil hat, but otherwise the mistake's image will vanish from any photos, and the world will create a fold on itself, concealing all the evidence. But all hope isn't lost, because it's possible for someone to force the fold where someone was banished, and pull it wide open to form a portal between the void and the world. And that's exactly what happens in the episode The Void. It starts with the disappearance of a classmate, and once Gumball figures out that it's Molly who disappeared, he's shocked to find out that no one remembers her.
You're telling me that in a class full of her friends who went to school with her your whole life, not one of you remembers Molly?
So they team up with Mr. Small to find out what happened to Molly. And that's where they come across this other dimension. Apparently, the world of Elmore thinks that shorts, laser discs, and mullets are all mistakes. Even Rob can be spotted as the brothers try to find Molly. Luckily, everyone escapes in one piece, but the same can't be said for Rob, because if the exit is through a vulnerable position, your existence will become disfigured and glitched. The only other thing that can open this portal is the universal remote with the AV button, and the same button can be used to change the quote-unquote channel of the void. But all of this means that the void essentially runs through all of Elmore, like a hell that's waiting for everyone to become irrelevant. But what places do you think I missed? Comment them down below. From multiverse breaking events to timeline shifting anomalies, Gumball plays with the rules of its universe a bunch of times throughout the show, which naturally causes a lot of plot holes to come up. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the biggest plot holes in Gumball history, starting with our first plot hole in the Nobody. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin have been accused by the family of stealing their belongings, but they have no idea what they're talking about. So they decide to go investigating in the house, but can't find anything. They then decide to look for a secret room to try to find an entrance. Eventually, Darwin leans on the side of the stairs, and just like Harry Potter, there's a room underneath the stairs. In fact, there's an entire basement which Rob has been living in for a whole year. Now, this room opens up a bunch of plot holes. Firstly, and most importantly, how did they not know that there was a basement there? They have literally lived in this house for more than a decade, and not once did Richard or Nicole ever think to check if there was a basement or tell their kids about the basement, despite the fact that they bought the house, which means that in the tour of the house, or possibly in the paperwork, they would have explicitly been told that there was a basement. Secondly, how did they not know that Rob was living there the whole time? Unless his footsteps are quieter than a mouse, they should have heard him at least once. They also weren't able to see him snooping around the house for food like a raccoon. There were also multiple points in the show where that basement door should have been opened, most notably in the second episode of the show, where the entire house got flooded. The secret door should have opened at that point, but now the door only opens when the plot is convenient. There's no explanation I can think of as an in-universe explanation as to why they couldn't find the basement, so this is the prime example of a plot hole. However, we're not done with the basement yet, because very recently in season 7, in the episode The Distance, Gumball and Darwin have been getting way too close for comfort. So Nicole splits them up and puts them in different rooms. Gumball gets the bedroom, and Darwin gets the basement. Now, the last time we see the basement, it's in pretty rough condition, but somehow Nicole made the entire room not only livable, but it had a complete glow up. The entire room is refurbished, and there's even a whole aquarium which Darwin can play in. Now, the obvious plot hole here is how could they fit an entire aquarium in the basement in like 15 minutes? But another big plot hole is that after years and years of Gumball and Darwin getting in each other's business, only now does Nicole do something about it. So this basement definitely brings a lot of plot holes. However, let's circle back to Rob, who opens a bunch more plot holes. We first see Rob in the episode The Pony, and here we see Rob as kind of a loser who knows Gumball and Darwin, but they have no idea about him. So this causes quite an awkward reaction where Gumball and Darwin have to try to avoid him, which doesn't work. After this episode, we don't see Rob for a while, but then in the previously mentioned episode The Nobody, we see Rob again, but this time he's in the basement and he's all glitchy for some reason. Eventually, we find out that Rob was in the void before Gumball and Darwin left with Molly. He grabbed onto the van and was able to go back to the normal world, but he was left disfigured. There's no explanation as to why Rob would hide in Gumball and Darwin's house, except for the fact that he has no family. Rob was a perfectly normal person before going into the void, so there's no reason why he couldn't go back to his original family like Molly did. He tries saying that he doesn't remember anything, but he's able to go back to the Wattersons' house and find the basement before either Gumball and Darwin did. Aside from Rob somehow knowing more information about the Wattersons, even though he lost his memory, there are a lot more plot holes in regards to Rob. In the season 8 finale, The Rewrite, Rob does everything he can to try to save Elmore and Gumball, despite the fact that in the X, Rob declares how much he hates Gumball.
I think I really say it. Hate you!
So why would he go out of his way to save him? So we have both Rob's memories and motives as massive plot holes. The final plot hole about Rob that we're going to talk about is in the rerun. And in this episode, Gumball defeats Rob, who then has a change of heart, which causes him to go back in time with his magical remote and destroy it to redeem himself. But in the X, Gumball remembers the timeline before Rob turns back time. However, when Gumball went back in time in the disaster, Rob forgets about the timeline before Gumball reverses time. So how is Gumball able to remember this? There isn't an in-universe explanation, so this classifies as a plot hole. But now let's turn our heads to something we just glossed over: Molly. Molly was in a similar situation as Rob, where she was basically forgotten by the universe and sent to the void.
You're telling me that in a class full of her friends who went to school with her your whole life, not one of you remembers Molly?
However, somehow Gumball and Darwin were about to remember Molly, and they went with Mr. Small to try to find her in the void. When they find Molly, she's in her treehouse and has no recollection of how she even got into the void. Now, you would probably think that after Molly gets out of the void, she would probably try to become more memorable in order to stay out of the void again. But you'd be wrong, because Molly has consistently been the most boring character, even after being saved from the void. So in the episode, Molly tells the entire class a bunch of stories about her life that are so boring that the entire school has to hide from her, so they don't feel guilty about not listening to her stories. Even when Gumball and Darwin conduct the perfect story for Molly to tell, she finds a way to ruin it and make it boring.
Your stories are perfect the way they are.
Oh, good. I hope you would tell me if I was boring. Bless you.
Molly's boringness is further seen in the episode appropriately titled Boring. In this episode, Molly literally yaps for so long that she can actually stop time. She's so boring that it transcends nature. So why doesn't she end up back in the void? Especially since she was a more interesting character before she went to the void, as we can see in episodes like The Pressure. So ironically, escaping the void of irrelevance only made her more boring. Yet she doesn't go back into the void. Another plot hole about Molly comes from the previously mentioned episode, The Void. At the end of the episode, Gumball, Darwin, and Molly lose their memories about the void, as their tinfoil hats get sucked back into the void.
We must tell everyone before the world tries to make us forget.
But how could we forget something like that?
What were we talking about again?
However, in the episode The Rerun, Gumball seems very familiar with the place and how to traverse the land, as opposed to in the void, where he was taken aback by the place and was unable to move around without hitting a bunch of stuff. How is this possible if he lost all his memories in the void? There is no reason given, so there's a plot hole. But now, we're gonna take a sharp left turn from all the multiversal timeline shenanigans and look at the hobo, named Hobo. We first see him in the episode The DVD, where he steals Gumball and Darwin's money and buys a winning lottery ticket. This brings us to technically the first plot hole in the entire show, because the hobo doesn't even give the money back to Gumball and Darwin. Therefore, he should be rich by the next episode, right? Well, no, because the next time we see the hobo, he is absolutely dirt poor and has nothing despite literally winning the lottery. But this plot hole gets repeated a bunch of times. For example, in the episode The Saint, Gumball tries to break Alan emotionally because he is very annoyed by his positive attitude. Eventually, Gumball gives it up and asks Alan how he's able to stay so cool, and explains that the way he's able to live such a positive and happy life is that he says yes to everything. One of the things that Alan says yes to is giving a homeless man $5.
You know, Gumball, when a man says yes to life, life says yes to him.
Hey, kid, do you want to buy this popsicle I just planted on the sidewalk?
Yes, here's $20.
Now, you probably wouldn't think anything of this act of kindness, but surprisingly, the hobo took the money and was somehow able to start a company. This company became very successful to the point where Alan's $5 is now worth a whole briefcase of money. He seems to be even more successful than he was after winning the lottery. But similarly, in the next episode, we see him lose all his money and end up poor again. But oh no, we're not even done yet. that, because in the episode The List, Nicole accidentally gives Gumball and Darwin her dreams list instead of her chores list. The boys are somehow able to achieve her dreams, almost. One of the dreams that Gumball was able to do perfectly was to get rich. After they sold their company of pirate hooks, they became millionaires. They have no idea what to do with the money though, until they see the homeless man who they give all the money to. But yet again, in the next episode, the hobo is still poor. The final episode which shows this plot hole was in the app. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin get the app ClickSap, which is basically just TikTok, but it absolutely takes over the minds of the youth like zombies. The boys were trying to save the world when they met the hobo. He explains that he was the founder of ClickSap, who gave up the app after his guilt about the addictive nature. You may think that this is a solid explanation to the state we see him in, but this just raises more questions, like why is he begging for money if he gave up all of his money? And why does he steal money from Gumball and Darwin if he doesn't like getting his money from unethical means? So this hobo is just one massive plot hole. However, now we can fire through some shorter plot holes, like in the episode The Game. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin are cleaning out their room with Nicole when she finds Dodger Dare, the made-up game that Gumball and Darwin made that we've seen throughout the show to that point. But Gumball does not want to play the game and says it's evil before packing it into the trash and throwing it away. But then, for some weird reason, Nicole, Richard, and Anais dig the game out of the dumpster and then play it despite Gumball and Darwin telling them not to. This creates one massive plot hole because in the episode The 8, Miss Simeon comes to stay at the Wattersons' house, and to make her feel welcome, Gumball and Darwin play Dodger Dare with her. When Miss Simeon picks up the card, she gets a dare about playing a prank on herself, which Gumball forgot was in the deck. So Gumball picks up another card for Miss Simeon, which was also about her, and so was the next, and the next. You get the point. So he stops the game. This is a massive plot hole, because the reason Gumball doesn't want to play Dodger Dare in the game was because once you start, you can't quit. But in the ape, after literally seeing cards about Miss Simeon, he's somehow able to stop the game, despite the fact it literally says you can't quit the game. But this isn't the only plot hole in the episode.
Let's just pack it away.
No, you can't stop! Once you start Dodger Dare,
It has to be finished.
Because when Gumball, Darwin, and Nicole are cleaning out the room, they find a skeleton of a dead fish, which Nicole says is Darwin the First. They thought that Darwin the First went to the ocean, but Gumball and Nicole have clearly been lying to him. This creates a bunch of plot holes, mostly stemming from the episode's origins. In this episode, we see Gumball meets Darwin, but before he does, we see Gumball meeting all the Darwins before the main Darwin. The other plot hole that comes from Darwin's origins comes in the episode The Party. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin go to Rachel's party, which at first was calm and nice, but eventually turns into havoc after Miss Simeon and Principal Brown comes in. Eventually, Darwin goes outside and meets Rachel, and when he introduces himself, he says that he's Darwin Watterson III.
What's your name? Darwin, Raglan, Caspian, Ahab, Poseidon, Nicodemus, Watterson III.
However, in the origins, Darwin is far from the third, so I have no idea where the third comes from. But finally, I think there's no better way to end this video than by looking at the plot holes that stem from the episode The Finale. In this episode, Gumball and the family get served with legal papers for all the stuff that happened in episodes prior, like Hector destroying the town, Gumball torturing his teachers, and just so much destruction of property. They spend the entire episode trying to make up for all their wrongdoings in order to get the lawsuits lifted from them, but it only ends up in even worse consequences for the family, as they get shoved into prison. Eventually, they realize that the only way to get out of this is to make things even worse. Sure, they absolutely destroy the entire town and get everybody to turn against them and chase them to the house, where the mob breaks open the window and are literally about to kill the Wattersons. But then Gumball says,
the only thing that can save us is reality being completely reset by some kind of magic device!
And then the credits roll. The implication is that the credits will reset the entire universe, and no events that happen in the episode will matter because it'll all get reset by the end. This creates so many problems and plot holes. Like, even in this episode, the legal papers that the Wattersons get from their actions in previous episodes shouldn't happen because by the logic of the universe resetting after the credits, so the events from the other episode should be erased. And so the Wattersons' actions technically didn't happen, but there are a bunch more plot holes that arise due to this, like Gumball becoming Penny's boyfriend in the shell. Technically, Gumball shouldn't be her boyfriend after this episode because all the events that happened in that episode should be erased. This also goes against a lot of episodes with Rob with it, like in the rerun, the Nemesis, and the X, because all these episodes are follow-ups of previous episodes, which should have been erased due to the credits. But if I missed any plot holes, make sure to comment them down below. And by now, we've seen Gumball go up against plenty of people in Elmore, and after all of the videos that I've made on his strength, it's clear he can hold his own. But what happens when he fights characters from other cartoons? Well, today we're gonna find out, and by the end of this video, we'll see who really comes out on top, starting with the first matchup, which is Gumball versus SpongeBob. Now, there are multiple different things that we can talk about between these two characters, but probably one of the most crucial things that will play out for every character in this video is something called Toon Force. Basically, Toon Force is the saying when a character is essentially able to override reality, physics laws, and basic logic in order to have crazy results occur. Toon Force is what makes all of these characters go through absurd things in the episode that clearly are impossible in real life. One good example of this is in Gumball in the episode The Job, where Gumball, Darwin, and Larry force reality to reset after they don't like Richard's job. Now, that's just one of the many examples. However, now let's compare Toon Forces between SpongeBob and Gumball. As we all know, we see these characters utilize Toon Force a lot. However, Gumball does this in more extreme ways often. Let me explain. Basically, SpongeBob uses Toon Force to achieve wackier scenarios that don't necessarily help him in a fight against Gumball. An example of this is seen in Frankendoodle, where SpongeBob breaks reality by causing anything he draws to become real. Now, obviously, this can be deemed useless. However, if SpongeBob was smart about it, he could draw things that would help him win against Gumball. But this won't really help, as Gumball's Toon Force abilities throughout the show are usually way more extreme, and have a higher likelihood of helping him win a fight, such as in the rerun, where Gumball can literally loop time and make things happen over again, which is essentially Gumball being able to see the future. This very easily helps him win against SpongeBob. So overall, Toon Force can be debated. However, Gumball has simply had more occasions that can actually help him win. But now, let's dive into the more basic things that you probably all have wanted to see, such as strength, durability, IQ, speed, and everything of that nature. Now, let's start off with overall strength, which is actually pretty difficult for this character. This is because both of them just use Toon Force as their strength when they're going through conflicts, which does make it hard to decide. But at the end of the day, Gumball is a cat, while SpongeBob is quite literally a sponge. So putting all the Toon Force crap out of the way, I think it's very likely that Gumball can use this to his advantage in a fight. However, that actually ties us into the next thing, which is durability, which honestly, SpongeBob can take that one due to the same fact that he's a literal sponge. So he can definitely endure things that Gumball probably wouldn't be able to. But the outcome most definitely wouldn't be the same when it comes to IQ and speed, which are gonna have some wild results, starting with the more hardcore one, which is IQ. Now, as we all know, both Gumball and SpongeBob don't have an A-class IQ. However, when it comes to the two, Gumball is just a tad bit smarter. This is due to the fact that we see Gumball often come up with solutions to many problems. Now, while the solutions are usually stupid, we see him often strategize heavily, such as in The Plan, where Gumball thinks of an absurd plan to try to expose Nicole's supposed new boyfriend.
I've got a plan!
First, Darwin uses his man voice to call Mom pretending to be her boss and tell her that she has to go into work.
Hello, this is your boss from the place you work.
When she leaves the house, we hack into her email and send a message to Daniel interposing as her to get him to agree to a secret meeting in the park tonight.
SpongeBob, on the other hand, doesn't really have much strategizing IQ, and we see this play out in boating school, where SpongeBob can't even pass basic driving tests, despite putting in extreme effort. So yeah, let's not debate on IQ anymore, as Gumball clearly takes the win. And the same can also be said for speed, which doesn't need much explanation. I mean, come on, Gumball is literally a cat, and we've seen instances of Gumball being incredibly fast, which proves my point even more. Well, those were definitely a lot of comparisons, but if you didn't already notice, Gumball did win a majority of these, which means that Gumball would most likely come out on top against SpongeBob. However, we aren't done with iconic cartoon characters just yet, as Mordecai is another infamous Cartoon Network character that is commonly compared to Gumball. And let's just say that the outcome might be a bit different. But before we move on, consider subscribing, as no one else is doing battle theories on YouTube right now like I am. Anyways, let's start this off a bit differently, and actually talk about strength first, which is honestly right in Mordecai's league, as we often see this Blue Jay go absolutely insane when it comes to strength and fighting, such as in Exit 9B, where we see many characters during this huge fight, using items and combat weapons to fight, while Mordecai just uses his own fists to fight. However, like we went over earlier, Gumball usually relies on Toon Force, and we rarely see him have any good strength and physical fighting abilities, so him winning against Mordecai in this category is very unlikely, which gives strength to Mordecai without a doubt. But now let's discuss durability, and a new one, which is battle IQ. And again, these are all super important aspects when it comes to a fight like this. However, durability can be a bit of a different outcome, as Gumball actually takes the win here for durability. Now, the explanation for this is actually really self-explanatory, and this is because Gumball simply can't get knocked out or even die. Throughout the show, we've seen Gumball go from taking hits from Tina Rex to literally surviving reality glitches. However, Mordecai, on the other hand, has been knocked out before and simply can't be immune to everything.
I guess we'll stay like this then.
Rigby! No! Come back, Rigby!
However, while this category is very key to a fight, battle IQ is just a tad bit more important. This is what fully decides what moves these characters would do in a fight, and honestly, this one goes to Mordecai without a doubt. Now, one reason this goes to Mordecai is due to the fact that he's simply been in more fights, which results in him having more experience and better strategizing skills. And with taking all this into consideration, we can confidently say that Mordecai takes the win against Gumball in a fight, which makes the current score 1-1. But these battles are only going to get more and more interesting, as now we have Gumball versus Lincoln Loud from the Loud House, starting off with strength, which if we compared the two, Gumball takes this one. This is due to the fact that at the end of the day, Lincoln is quite literally a normal 11-year-old kid with basic strengths, while Gumball is a fierce cat with fast speeds and insane Toon Force abilities, which helps him gain strength alone. One great example of this is in the past, where Gumball turns into Goku and helps him have extreme strengths. So yeah, Lincoln doesn't have much room to compete with Gumball for strength, and obviously speed. But now let's talk about IQ, which let's just say is gonna have a different outcome. Now, as we went over earlier, Gumball isn't really smart. However, he's able to think of ways to problem solve, although a majority of the time, these solutions would either lead to the problem becoming worse, or Gumball flat out getting in trouble. But Lincoln, on the other hand, actually has better IQ, and usually has very good problem solving skills and good context clues, which we see in It's a Loud, Loud, Loud House, where we see Lincoln discover that there's an inheritance of some sort from the old homeowners hidden somewhere, and Lincoln has to follow some clues to find it, which he actually proceeds to do. So overall, Lincoln being able to do things like these shows that he's easily able to take the win for IQ. However, Gumball did beat him in more categories, so with that, Gumball takes the win for this one. However, the next match matchup is a pretty predictable result, and that's Robin from Teen Titans Go versus Gumball. Now, as we all know, Robin is quite literally an actual superhero, so this one's gonna be fun. But anyways, let's start off with agility, which is pretty interesting, as both of these characters actually have pretty good agility skills, with Gumball being a cat respectively, along with having good reaction skills. However, Robin just has him beaten when it comes to overall agility, and we see this proven in Super Robin, where Robin has incredible super speed. So yeah, Robin clearly takes the dub for agility, but what about strength and durability? Well, the answer is simple for strength, as Robin is clearly stronger than Gumball due to the fact that Robin is bigger than Gumball, and has more combat action than him too. He's also often seen doing tasks that only people with good strength can achieve. Clearly, Robin is stronger. However, without a doubt, Gumball has some strength in there too, but Robin has him beaten by quite a bit. But durability, on the other hand, is a bit of a different story, as believe it or not, despite all of Robin's abilities and advantages, Gumball actually has him beaten when it comes to durability. Now obviously, we've seen Robin show some pretty decent durability, but thanks to the Toon Force Gumball obviously displays, he endures way crazier events that he ends up surviving. The disaster being a prime example of this, as Rob was essentially putting Gumball through torture with that remote, and Gumball endured all of it.
No, I mean, what's the worst that can happen?
So yeah, Gumball being able to survive a straight-on impact car crash says a lot. So Gumball honestly deserves durability, but despite this, he unfortunately still loses this one, as Robin has him slightly beaten, which means that the other characters get a point this time around. However, there can't be a cartoon-related video without talking about Family Guy, which brings us to the next matchup, which is Gumball versus Brian Griffin. Now this one is gonna be cool due to the fact that it's quite literally a cat versus a dog fighting. But let's start with Toon Force, which let's just say doesn't look too good for Brian. This is because he usually lacks Toon Force within the show, and one amazing example of this is in the life of Brian, where we see Brian get ran over by a car after Stewie destroys his time machine, and unfortunately he ends up dying. However, Brian wouldn't get revived for another 2 episodes, which shows that he lacks Toon Force abilities, as Gumball would have likely gotten revived soon after in some sort of wacky way. So yeah, Brian definitely lacks Toon Force abilities, and in general, we don't really see much Toon Force in Family Guy, as it's less of a wacky show and more on the comedic side. So like most of the other cartoon characters, Gumball takes the win for Toon Force, but something that kind of ties in with Toon Force for this fight is durability, which unfortunately Brian doesn't really have in the bag either. And this ties in so well for our Toon Force example, because Brian literally couldn't survive being hit by a car for 2 episodes, while Gumball has basically survived anything and everything throughout the show's lifespan, such as literally being inside a janitor's cart on the highway while falling into a huge hole and being able to survive all of it.
Ugh. What happened?
Clearly, Brian doesn't have durability in the bag, and unfortunately, Brian's out here getting violated by Gumball, as strength doesn't look too good on Brian either. Now, when it comes to strength, we don't often see Gumball fight at all. However, there's one big difference that changes everything, and that's the fact that Brian has gotten beat up a lot throughout the show by multiple different people, and the majority of the time, he puts up zero effort into trying to actually defeat them. Yeah, you honestly can't do more besides feel bad for bro, as he already can't do much to fight back in these situations, which in a fight obviously isn't good. So overall, Gumball takes the win for the strength category, which means that in general, Gumball takes the win over Brian in a fight. But now, let's be honest, Gumball had it pretty easy with Brian. However, things are gonna stop being so easy with this next matchup between Gumball and Finn. This matchup is easily a wicked one. Let's start with combat, which is a fighting category that we haven't covered much so far. However, it's very appropriate to cover this when it comes to Finn. Now, if you've watched Adventure Time before, you know that Finn has some pretty good skills within him, such as being very good with swords and overall being a good fighter when it comes to combat. We've seen this in episodes such as The Lich, where we see Finn defeat this huge monster, which was overall pretty impressive. However, Gumball on the other hand doesn't really have much great combat skills, and the few times we do see him engage in combat, he abuses Toon Force in some sort of way which helps him out. So assuming that Toon Force isn't fully allowed, we can confidently say that Finn wins in combat against Gumball, which means that Finn basically takes the win for strength, durability, and fighting skills, as combat is essentially all three of those combined into one. And this puts the overall score at 3-3 for other cartoon characters, making it a tie. Now, we've made it pretty far into these matchups so far, which means that this next one has gotta be the tiebreaker, and none other than Bart Simpson himself gets the honor to break that tie. Now, just like Brian, Bart is another really good matchup for Gumball, as both characters are pretty similar for the troublemaker aspect, as they both get into trouble pretty often in their shows, so this matchup is gonna be a fun one. Let's start off with combat, as this category honestly isn't that hard, due to the fact that Bart isn't in combat situations that often, and the few times that he has been have been either flat out dumb, or he gets other people to do the dirty work for him, such as in Bart the General, where we see Bart lead a neighborhood war against Nelson Muntz. However, in the episode, Bart is quite literally just standing out there while the other neighborhood kids on his side fight for him. Clearly, this isn't a good look for Bart. And yes, some of you may argue that this could help Bart win, as he could get other people to fight Gumball for him, but that honestly opens a whole new rabbit hole that we definitely can't get into in this video. So since Bart can't put up a good effort in defending himself, fighting skills and durability goes to Gumball. However, I know a lot of you like Bart, so don't worry. He isn't a full-on loser when it comes to the battle, as IQ is gonna have a very different outcome. Now, Gumball's IQ is a bit dysfunctional like I explained earlier, due to the fact that he does put in efforts to solve problems. However, these quote-unquote solutions are always pretty wacky, and will either not work or flat out get him into more trouble. And quite frankly, Bart is pretty similar, as he always cheats his way out of things and finds loopholes in situations, such as in Bart the Genius, where we see Bart cheat on the aptitude test, and this leads him to pass, getting sent to a gifted school, as they thought Bro had an IQ of 216. Now, while this was a pure act of manipulation, we can theorize that if Bart locked in and used this sort of manipulation IQ while fighting Gumball, he would be able to make some good decisions and possibly make a change in this fight. So with Bart having situations like these throughout the show, I think I have no choice but to give IQ to Bart. However, unfortunately, Bart still came in short for these fighting categories, as Gumball won more, which means that Gumball overall takes the win against Bart, making the final score 4-3, which means that Gumball came out successful in the long run against most of these cartoon characters, which I bet you didn't expect. Over the years, we have encountered many villains in the amazing world of Gumball, from genuine threats on the town of Elmore to one-off characters looking to ruin people's days. We're gonna be going over what happened to every Gumball villain, and we can't make a video talking about Gumball's villains without starting with Rob. Rob is one of the show's deepest and most complex characters. He used to be a normal student attending Elmore Junior High, getting into trouble with the rest of his classmates. A great example of this is in the episode The Party. In this episode, we see him attending Tobias's sister, Rachel's party that she's throwing while her parents are out of town. The party starts slow with everyone doing something random, but the party ends up getting wild fast after Miss Simeon and Principal Brown show up. But I do find it a bit strange that two elderly adult teachers show up to crash a high school party. But honestly, those two are just as immature as the students who attend the school they teach at. Regardless, we can see Rob in the crowd with the rest of his classmates, having the time of his life. We don't see him much in this episode, considering he didn't have a speaking line, but an episode where we see his first major speaking role was The Pony. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin rent a DVD for Anais after promising a sibling movie night and watching a movie together that Anais wants to watch. As established, Rob has always been a background character up until this moment. Gumball and Darwin were running home and ran into Rob. At first, Rob was excited to run into them and greet them, but Gumball and Darwin did not remember his name. Clearly, Honestly, Rob feels betrayed by this interaction, considering he was excited to see Gumball and Darwin, but the fact that they didn't remember his name at all really felt like a betrayal to him. After Gumball and Darwin started chasing the DVD around town, it falls into the sewer drain, but since Darwin kicked Rob into the sewer, he grabbed the disc, but Gumball and Darwin address him with the wrong name again, and Rob throws the disc the opposite direction for them to continue to chase it. Both of these interactions between Gumball, Darwin, and Rob shows us how pushed aside and forgotten Rob is. These are some key moments that made Rob who he is today. But now, let's talk about how Rob became his current disfigured form as a villain. And it all starts in the Nobody. This episode starts with Gumball and Darwin investigating the random noises in their house when they find a secret room under their stairs. And they discover Rob, who was hiding in their house since the events of the Void until they found him. He describes the events of the Void and how he came back disfigured. Gumball and Darwin then try to encourage Rob to become something instead of being a nobody. They give him multiple suggestions for good personalities, and then realize they were taken, so they switch to bad personalities, and Rob remembers what happened in the Void. Rob goes on a tangent about how he was in the Void where all mistakes go, him being one of them. He somehow managed to escape, but all at what cost? He came out disfigured and corrupted. He grows resentful since becoming his corrupt form, and blames Gumball and Darwin for being the way he is since he felt abandoned, officially claiming himself as their nemesis. He later adopts a new voice with an accent and a new alias under the name Dr. Wrecker.
Dr. Wrecker!
His first real scheme was in the bus, when Rob, as Dr. Wrecker, manipulates Principal Brown into staging a fake skip school hostage situation on the bus. He swaps the ransom briefcase for a real bomb, kidnaps everyone, and plans to blow up the bus for revenge on Gumball and to steal $1 million. It's Rob's most competent scheme as Dr. Wrecker. He uses smart manipulation, and the stakes are high, but it still backfires hilariously. Rob's final appearance is in the rewrite, where he resolves the cliffhanger that we were left on in the original series. And in the end, it turns out he actually wasn't as big of a villain as we thought he was. It's crazy how Rob has changed over the span of the series, starting from a background character nobody cares about, to a main villain and nemesis, then to a protector from the Void. But now, let's talk about a villain that appeared once, and this one really can't be taken seriously in my opinion. This is Mr. Build-A-Burger. He is, well, a burger, but not just any burger. He is a greedy, evil, and sinister corporate businessman who enjoys watching mankind suffer. We are introduced to Mr. Build-A-Burger in the episode The Burger, and this is the first episode of the wonderfully weird world of Gumball, being the revival series where Gumball and Darwin wake up in a dusty house after 7 years of inactivity. They go back to school and learn about junk food, its impact on the body, and how junk food is bad for your health. After Miss Simeon's lesson, Darwin becomes obsessed with trying to eat healthy, so the boys set off to eat something healthier. The episode really gets into corporate greed and how most things contain additives or preservatives that are really bad for your body. Gumball and Darwin try to grow their own food from seeds, but Larry has to stop them because it turns out that Larry's boss is the CEO of Joyful Burger and owns every restaurant, food store, animal, vegetable, fruit, seed, and agricultural means of production in Elmore, making it impossible for the boys to feed themselves on anything relatively healthy. With this in mind, Gumball and Darwin set out to find Mr. Build-A-Burger and have a word with him. Discovering how greedy he is, Gumball and Darwin get desperate to eat anything at this point. Larry nudges at Mr. Build-A-Burger during his speech, and the boys decide to eat him considering he himself is food. But now, let's talk about my boy Julius. Julius is a bully at Elmore Junior High who resembles a classic 1920s cartoon similar to the early Mickey Mouse. He has an explosive temper, literally, and he is also the detention gang leader, though he doesn't exactly have mastermind evil plans, doing things like vandalism and bullying, with most of his plans ending up backfiring on him. A key episode he plays a major role in is the Sucker. In this episode, the Sucker Darwin gets sent to detention for vandalizing the tree in the schoolyard to spread a message to anti-vandalism. So he gets put in detention by Principal Brown and sees Julius in the room with him. They talk for a bit, and he realizes realizes that Darwin is very innocent, so he takes advantage of this fact and he uses Darwin's innocent nature against him to benefit himself. Yet, Darwin's innocence would eventually backfire, and he is defeated by his own scheme. He decides to use Julius's methods against him, telling him he declares wars with the bikers, patching things up with his girlfriend, and getting his dad arrested after framing him for Julius's crimes, and getting his mom deported. But it turns out Darwin told him all of that to manipulate Julius. But now, let's talk about the Wattersons' neighbors, the Robinsons. Starting off with the man of the house, Gaylord Robinson. We can describe him as short-tempered, uptight, and always angry. He has explosive and frequent outbursts. He lives next door to the Wattersons, who he isn't exactly fond of, but he particularly has a strong hatred for Gumball and Darwin specifically, constantly being annoyed by their shenanigans and antics. He is obsessed with money and fortune, and is desperate for a quiet and ordinary retirement. His first major role was in the debt. In this episode, being very early on in the series, Gumball, Darwin, and Anais were hanging out in their front lawn, waiting for their neighbor, Mr. Robinson, to come home. Gumball tells Darwin and Anais about the Elmore Senior Talent Show, with Mr. Robinson being on the front flyer. In our first impression of the Robinsons, it shows that Gumball admires him greatly, but that feeling is not mutual. Gumball believes that Mr. Robinson saved him by not hitting him with his car, and he believes that he owes him a debt. So Gumball spends the entire rest of the episode quote-unquote saving his life. But honestly, these attempts just end up pissing off Mr. Robinson even more. Gumball finally achieves this by saving Mr. Robinson during his performance by tackling him as the stage light falls down and almost hits him. Mr. Robinson was thankful initially, realizing Gumball had pushed him out of the way before he could get crushed by the light. And it turns out all three people in the audience, including his son Rocky Robinson, enjoyed the show and applauded him. But despite Gumball's efforts, Mr. Robinson ends up getting crushed by the Darwin and Anais platform that they were standing on. But I'm sure he's okay. This episode clearly shows that Gumball has a strong admiration for Mr. Robinson, and clearly respects him and looks up to him, even if Mr. Robinson doesn't feel the same way, considering he wants a quiet and peaceful retirement life. But in my opinion, living next to the Wattersons makes that nearly impossible. Despite his cold nature, I would say he's the lesser of two evils when compared to his wife Margaret. Mrs. Robinson is quite an interesting character. Despite her limited communication skills, she is evil beyond repair. She always played a part to terrorize the citizens of Elmore and the people close to her. But Mrs. Robinson's first major role as a villain was in The Wicked. This episode really gets into Mrs. Robinson's life story and the lengths that she will go to ruin the lives of the citizens in Elmore. We begin with Gumball, Darwin, and Mrs. Robinson all hanging out at the park. They notice some squirrels and Mrs. Robinson was feeding them nuts, but it turns out these were not any nuts. These nuts were coated in coffee, giving the squirrels a caffeine rush and causing them to go crazy trying to eat everyone who was at the park. When Donut Cop later shows up to assess the situation, Mrs. Robinson smiles and points at Gumball and Darwin, frames them for causing the chaos, causing them to serve time doing community service, which really made Gumball upset. Darwin believes that everyone has a good side to them, and wants to see that in Mrs. Robinson. But later in the episode, Mrs. Robinson breaks into a song, showing us how far she's willing to go to make people's lives a living hell. She opened the front door, hitting the mailman as he was delivering their mail, placed a butterfly on a spider web to get attacked by a spider, knocks down the neighbor's trash cans as she's walking past them and smells them, goes into Mr. Small's yard as he was attending to his plants and cuts his flowers, goes into someone's mailbox and throws their mail on the ground, throws a bucket of chemicals onto Mr. Brown's car and places the bucket down and escapes the scene to make it look like the window worker did it, steals a man's wallet out of his hands after doing a twirl to distract him, after he was done using the ATM, and so much more. Gumball and Darwin then go to the Robinsons' house to give a free cleaning service, but their true intention was to investigate Mrs. Robinson's history and her lore. Mr. Robinson describes her as pure evil, and there is no reason behind the way she is. She has always been this way, since childhood. When Gumball and Darwin found a photo album full of Mrs. Robinson's childhood photos, they found some interesting photographs depicting Mrs. Robinson as always having an evil side. Mr. Robinson appears to explain that Margaret has always been evil, and it will always be a mystery as to why she is the way she is. There's another important moment in this episode that became the turning point. Darwin nearly chokes to death on a chocolate egg toy, and Mrs. Robinson looks right at him and smiles menacingly instead of helping. This breaks Darwin. He declares her pure evil and decides she needs to pay. Gumball and Darwin decide to go to the Elmore Mall to attempt to frame her. Mrs. Robinson speeds away recklessly in the stolen car, driving through the mall's doors and endangering the people inside. Gumball catches up to her and pulls the handbrake on her, launching her backwards. They come out of the car to shake hands, but she puts the bandana she was wearing in Gumball's hand just before the police came and try to frame them. Then she proceeds to drive away in her own car and smiles at them and attempts to speed away from the scene. Karma ends up doing its job and Mrs. Robinson. It's safe to say that she's wanted by the police considering she's committed multiple crimes, but she hasn't had a major role since the episode The Wicked. But now let's talk about Chi-Chi and the entire Copycat family. In the episode The Copycats, the Watterson family goes grocery shopping. Gumball and Darwin stop at the exotic food section when Chi-Chi and Ribbit appear in the same section they were just browsing. When they encounter each other, they start imitating each other. As the Watterson family were on their way home from the store, Gumball explains what just happened, and shortly after the entire family is driving next to them. Nicole takes notice and questions it. When the Wattersons go home to investigate their counterparts, they discover that they run a channel that recreates the Wattersons' chaotic family life, shoot for views and profit, invading their privacy and stealing their originality. They were all laughing at their doppelgangers, except for Anais, who doesn't have one due to the former one-child policy in China, and boys were always favored over girls. She was listed as deleted, and Anais feels left out, but little does she know this would actually help them in the long run. Moving on, they get the idea to sue them, to get some compensation, but Anais tells Richard in cookie dough tons how much it would cost. Richard ends up fainting, tipping the couch over, then the laptop pings with a new video of the same thing that just happened on the couch, except with Chi-Chi's family. Gumball is puzzled considering it just happened. He discovers the family's doppelgangers are outside their window, and the Wattersons go outside to investigate. They engage in a physical fight, but Anais realizes that this isn't getting them anywhere. The Wattersons break into a song about being yourself and living your own life, about how copying is wrong. Turns out they continued to copy the Wattersons' lives by copying their song and telling them not to come back. Anais gets the idea, since Chi-Chi and his family are copying every little thing they do, she suggests that they live their lives as dangerously as possible to see if they can kill them off. This is when the family proceeds to do anything considered dangerous, like a Gumball cutting wires to a dynamite bomb, which fails, Richard tying himself up with chains in a bathtub and lying down in a tub full of water, Darwin eating breakfast blindfolded and attempting to add dangerous chemicals into his food, and Richard juggling chainsaws while blindfolded. After all of that, Richard goes to the hospital to donate a kidney, but it ends up getting passed to Richard's doppelganger, who donates it to someone else. The Wattersons get the idea to drive a speeding truck towards an unfinished bridge with a flaming trail of gasoline behind it. They realize it's too late and actually too lethal for them. They panic, flail, and try to stop, but fortunately, Anais, being small enough to squeeze under the truck, unscrews the fuel tank just in time, causing a massive explosion that severs the connection and lets their truck stop safely. The doppelgangers lack an Anais equivalent, meaning there's no small sibling to unhook the tank. They blindly copy the stunt and drive straight off the bridge into a fiery crash, leading to an explosion. I think it's safe to say that Chi-Chi and his family have perished in the explosion, considering there have been no more episodes about the copycats. But now, let's take a look at some of the teachers at Gumball School, because some of them are seriously evil, starting with Miss Simeon. Miss Simeon is a baboon who's been teaching at Elmore Junior High since the Stone Age. She is a prideful, ancient tyrant who rules her classroom with insults and revenge. Let's look at the time where she tries very hard to get the boys in trouble. In The Apology, Miss Simeon was teaching her class like a normal school day, when the class notices something very strange: her butt. With the class traumatized, Gumball wants to tell her to save her from embarrassing herself further. He tried to whisper to her, but to no success. Then he attempts to subtly fly a paper airplane with a note written on it, but it ends up poking Miss Simeon in the eye. Miss Simeon immediately assumes it's a deliberate prank from the boys and drags them to Principal Brown's office, ranting about how they're disruptive delinquents and demanding punishment. Principal Brown asks asks for an explanation, but Gumball and Darwin are too embarrassed to tell them that her behind was exposed, so they stay silent. Brown then tells Simeon that she owes them an apology for jumping to conclusions, but she refuses because her pride won't let her admit fault. This sparks her obsession. She decides to prove that the boys are bad kids so that she doesn't have to apologize. Meanwhile, Gumball and Darwin feel guilty seeing Miss Simeon and Principal Brown's romance suffer because of the misunderstanding. In a rare selfless act, they decide to actually commit a crime, vandalizing Principal Brown's car for real, so Miss Simeon can quote-unquote catch them and prove her point, saving her pride, job, and relationship. Darwin throws rocks at the window to alert someone, but Brown's not there. Miss Simeon catches them red-handed and realizes their intent was to help her. She covers for them, taking the blame herself by accident, and the episode wraps up with Miss Simeon finally apologizing to the boys. She actually chuckles after they leave, showing a tiny crack in her tough shell and admitting indirectly that she was wrong. She hides a soft spot of her that we rarely see, and quietly sacrifices for her students while hiding a soft spot for her boyfriend, Principal Brown. But now let's talk about Gumball's grandma, Granny JoJo, and she can be truly evil. She is Richard's mother and often clashes with Nicole when it comes to parenting. She's the most present grandparent in the Watterson family and loves her grandchildren, kind of. But despite this, unlike Daniel and Mary raising Nicole, Granny JoJo has always coddled and sheltered Richard when he was growing up, and she treats the Watterson kids the same way she treated Richard when he was young. In the episode The Authority, Granny JoJo spent the entire time traumatizing the kids to shelter them in the house to keep them safe. This happens because Richard got injured and Granny JoJo has to step in. Granny JoJo and Nicole clash about their parenting styles, and they end up having a physical fight where she gaslights Nicole into believing that she's a bad parent. Richard and the kids end up going on a wild chase after being sent to the store by Nicole, but they forget how to control the vehicle, so Nicole speeds up in front of them and essentially forces them to learn how to stop the car, and encourages them into remembering what they learned. Nicole and Granny JoJo end up putting their differences aside, as JoJo ends up respecting Nicole more and sees things from her point of view. Regardless of all the trouble she causes and how mean she can be, she continues to be present for the Watterson family. But speaking of families, what about another part in the Watterson family tree? Frankie Watterson. Frankie Watterson, best known as Frankie, is the biological father of Richard and Granny JoJo's ex-husband. Frankie is an interesting character to say the least. He is a rat with a permanent black eye and a shady aura. He was first mentioned in The Watch. While Frankie doesn't physically appear in this episode, the mention establishes his role as a key figure in the family's backstory and directly ties him to the Watterson name. But the first time we see Frankie was in the signature. He's a scamming con artist who abandoned his family when Richard was 5 years old. When he finds a newspaper ad for him to come home, he takes it as a home for Frankie. Frankie takes this as an opportunity and attempts to scam the Wattersons out of their house by using his status as the senior Watterson to take ownership. Granny JoJo and Louie decided to get married so Louie can take the Watterson name to be able to get the deed to the house so Richard can keep it. Frankie and the Wattersons rush to the city hall and race the line. Frankie ends up making it to the clerk first and pulls the red ribbon on the Wattersons. Just as Frankie was about to finalize the paperwork on the house, he looks at Richard and has a flashback to the day he left home and reflects on his choices, realizing how much emotional damage he caused Richard. He ends up forfeiting the mission to obtain the house on his name. In The Father, Richard feels guilty and wishes to reconnect with his dad. The kids encourage Richard to go out and bond with Frankie to make up for lost time, but unfortunately, Frankie can't stop his criminal habits and ends up putting Richard in situations when he just wanted to keep things wholesome. It's revealed the real reason why Frankie left when Richard was young, and it was because he didn't want his son following the same criminal path that he was heading down. Frankie is definitely quite the villain, but at least he has a heart, which is honestly pretty similar to our next character, Tina Rex. Tina is Gumball and Darwin's classmate and occasional bully. She was held back 2 grades, lives in a junkyard with her savage dad, and regularly bullies smaller classmates and chases them around school. But in the fight, Anais notices signs of being bullied with Gumball, and when she discovers it's Tina, she calls in for help. Nicole then drives over to the junkyard to talk to Tina's dad, and using her intimidating strength, gives Mr. Rex a talk. Gumball and Tina's relationship evolves from pure antagonism to a rivalry rivalry with mutual respect/friendship vibes. Tina is also seen by everyone as a brute due to her size and strength, but in reality, all she wants to do is fit in with the rest of her classmates. Tina may be the occasional bully, but it's her way of having fun. It also doesn't help that Tina was raised the way she was too, living with her dad who embodies brute strength, and they literally live in a junkyard. But now let's talk about her best friend, who is also a bully, Jamie Russo. She's a classic example of mean girl bully who targets weaker classmates with physical threats, name calling, and coercion. In the episode The Girlfriend, she violently forces Darwin and later Gumball into a fake relationship, dragging them around, ignoring their protests, and acting delusional about romance without any concept of consent. She frequently joins Tina in group bullying schemes and harasses the boys across multiple episodes. The very infamous episode The Girlfriend starts with Jamie storming into the lunchroom stealing people's food. When she steals Carmen's food, Alan shares his food with her, and Jamie gets the idea to find a sweetheart. On the bus ride home, she was sitting next to Darwin by chance, and they become a quote-unquote couple. But Gumball doesn't approve of this, and Darwin continues to see how it goes. Their relationship was already off to a rocky start. The first thing Jamie does is threaten him if she gets ignored or broken up with. This scene basically explains itself. She is toxic and manipulative, and loses her temper easily. She ends up threatening Sarah and Richard, then declares Gumball as her boyfriend too. At the end of the episode, Jamie ends up knocking Darwin out for lecturing her about relationships. Jamie is definitely quite strange, and I would consider her a villain. But now let's talk about someone who's definitely just a straight up villain, and that's Ant One. In the episode The Recipe, we get to see him, a burnt, evil clone of Anton. Gumball and Darwin discover that Anton can be easily cloned by toasting bread. So logically, they decide to make multiple clones, including Ant One. He is the first one, which was basically burnt. Darwin proceeds to make multiple clones, and they come out later when Ant One ends up finding them and rallying the army of toast clones for revenge. But whatever happened to Ant One? Well, he gets mulched by a pool drain, and he's kind of a one and done burnt toast villain. But lastly, let's discuss another one-time villain who was a genuine threat to Gumball's ego, that being Zack. We're introduced to Zack in the single appearance alter ego of Gumball in the name. In this episode, Gumball and Darwin are at the arcade, mastering their button mashing techniques. Gumball ends up getting the high score and realizes his name will not sit there in the 3-letter spot for the leaderboard. Darwin suggests that Gumball use his real name instead of his nickname, but then Gumball comes to the realization that he doesn't know his real name, so he sets out on a quest to find out what it is, and goes to great lengths to do so. He goes around asking everybody, making big speeches about how history books will remember his quest, but conveniently, Nicole casually drops the bomb.
Your real name? It's Zach.
He starts repeating it to himself, and it grows on him, literally. He starts being a menace to people at school and in public, doing everything in his power to ruin someone's day. His family also fell victim to Zack's antics. Anais realizes that Zack is slowly taking over Gumball's mind, including his personality and memories. They speed to the town hall to give Zack a legal name change and defeat him once and for all. But that's what happened to every single Gumball villain. The Watersons may look like a slightly ordinary family at a first glance, but there is one thing that they've tried to bury deep within the lore, and it's been on my mind since the very beginning of the show, and that is, who are Darwin's real parents? To answer this, we're gonna go through everything that we know about Darwin, from his upbringing to everything he's mentioned about his family, and at the end, we're gonna tie all of this together from a tweet from the creator that may officially put this theory to rest once and for all. Our first clue comes from Darwin's origin story in the episode The Origins. It starts with a very hyperactive Gumball who Nicole and Richard couldn't keep up with, so Nicole had the idea to get him a pet so that he had something to spend his energy on. There was only one problem.
Swing low. Swing low.
The fish kept dying so much that the remaining fish jumped out of the tank when they saw Richard coming. He then found a different solution, a fish inside the Awesome Store van. But this fish was special, and the shopkeeper knew it.
Well, anyway, be careful. That fish is more special than it seems.
Back home, Gumball was overjoyed with his new fish, and things only got better when they formed a special bond. And oh, the fish also learned how to talk.
Can you understand everything I'm saying? This is amazing! Ow! Okay. My name is Gumball. Gumball.
But he tries to play a prank on his parents, which backfires on him. Richard almost flushed our Darwin down the toilet, and even when he's saved, he startles Nicole and gets flushed down anyway. Fast forward to the next episode, where Darwin is determined to get back home, and that's where we get an important moment.
Oh, right. You guys only speak fish. How do I get it back to
Darwin can speak to fish, which is crucial to our investigation because it means that he had learnt it from someone else, aka his fish parents, which will be important later. But back to the episode, through the power of friendship and love, Darwin got lungs and legs to be Gumball's beloved brother and best friend, and that's how he became a part of the Watterson family. Now, when it comes to Darwin's original parents, there's one big mention of them in the episode The Spoiler. When Gumball and Darwin need money for a movie, Darwin says this.
Really? Time to dig into the money my biological parents left me.
How can you inherit money from a couple of goldfish?
Ooh.
Maybe you should save these and invest them in your future. It's what they would have wanted.
Then where are we gonna get the money?
An inheritance is only given to their child when their parents no longer are in this world, so that should mean that they're dead, right? Well, the theory goes that this was a trick pulled by the Awesome Store shopkeeper so that Darwin doesn't go looking for them, because in the next episode, The List, Darwin actually thinks he sees his fish mother. It starts with Gumball and Darwin realizing how much Nicole gave up in order to raise kids, but instead of doing her chores list, they decide to try to fulfill her bucket list. The boys are super dedicated and spend the rest of the day checking everything off. Towards the end, Nicole finds out, just in time to go along with the boys on a world trip. And that's where it happens.
Ooh, I've never been scuba diving either.
Wait, is that my fish mom?
Oh yeah, I can see the resemblance.
There are two things here. First, if Darwin already knew his parents were dead, why didn't he dismiss it from the start? Everyone can agree that it's a weird looking piranha. It looks more like a goldfish piranha hybrid. Well, this is where the trick pulled by the shopkeeper comes in. Darwin could have figured out that it was just a trick, and so he kept hope that his parents were still alive. This piranha is weird, but it could solve the mystery of Darwin's origins. For whatever reason, Darwin already possessed powers to evolve, and these were activated by Gumball's love. But what if his entire family had these powers? And without Gumball's love, Darwin would have ended up as a piranha. But before I answer that question, make sure to subscribe for more amazing Gumball content. But we're not done with our investigation yet, because Darwin reveals another part of his family lineage right at the start of the show. In season 1, there's an episode called The Party, where Darwin is still adjusting to life on land. Tobias announces that his sister's having a party and everyone is invited, provided that they have a date. Principal Brown and Miss Simeon crash the party, and things get really out of hand. And Rachel, Tobias's sister, comes outside to cry, with Darwin following to comfort her.
You guys aren't my friends! You just trashed my parents' house!
Don't worry, I'll tidy it up.
Yeah, sure. You're gonna tidy all this up?
Of course. Don't you know I'm part suckerfish?
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Thanks.
Did you catch that? Darwin said that he is part suckerfish, which is a fish that latches onto bigger fishes in order to feed off their scraps. So on top of being a goldfish that can grow legs, this means that his species has branched out to other fishes in the past. And right after this moment, Darwin also reveals something else.
What's your name? Darwin, Raglan, Caspian, Ahab, Poseidon, Nicodemus, Watterson the Third.
His full name is one of the longest names on the show, and on top of that, it's also the most marine-related one. The name Darwin comes from Charles Darwin, who is the one that studied the theory of evolution. Raglan may refer to HMS Raglan, a World War I Royal Navy monitor vessel. The name may also be a reference to the town of Raglan, New Zealand. The town is well known for its surfing, as well as rare subspecies of dolphin. My boy Darwin has been shown to have the ability to utilize echolocation, as dolphins do after all. Caspin is likely a reference to the Caspian Sea, the world's largest enclosed body of water. On top of that, Prince Caspian is a character in the C.S. Lewis Chronicle of Narnia series. Darwin and the prince both possess many similar traits, in the sense that they're both the kind-hearted underdog, who gradually become a respected person in their own right. Ahab, another one of Darwin's names, is a reference to Captain Ahab, a sea captain who is obsessed with killing the white whale Moby Dick in the book of the same name. Poseidon is a reference to Poseidon, who is also known as Neptune in Roman mythology, and the god of the seas from Greek mythology. Poseidon is also the god of horses, and Darwin is shown to be used as a mount by Gumball on more than one occasion. Nicodemus is a reference to Nicodemus the Hagorite, who was a saint that lived from 1749 to 1809. He supposedly possessed a love for all things, much like Darwin's seemingly constant outlook on life. Nicodemus was also in the Bible, being reborn as Christian. This is similar to Darwin's transformation from an ordinary fish to a reverse mermaid. This brings me to the biggest theory of Darwin's real parents. There's been this concept floating around for a long time that the reason Darwin has all these powers is because he's a demigod. This is another reason as to why he has Poseidon in his name, because the Greek god is Darwin's father. And it sounds crazy until you look into the signs. Darwin literally got launched out to sea by himself in the Origins episode. And while he did have faith in Gumball, trying to go that route would have been a death sentence for any other fish. It's almost like Darwin knew that he had powers, but he didn't exactly know how they'd manifest. And the evolution part wasn't slow either. It happened literally instantly. Every time Darwin found himself at the edge of death, his powers came in clutch to save him. Considering that he knew how to speak fish, it could explain how Darwin knew about his parents in the first place. And this guy's eternal positivity could also come from this. I mean, the guy's insides are literally made out of love, according to the episode The Tracking.
Dude, what's going on inside you?
Darwin's full of love, not organs, bones, or blood. It's us love cells that make him run and dance and jump.
Children of Greek gods are known to have extraordinary powers, and so it doesn't seem too far-fetched to think that Darwin could actually belong to that set. But while this is a theory, the show's creators also haven't forgotten about Darwin's powers. When Ben Beauclet, Gumball's creator, was asked about Darwin's parents, this is what he had to say. As for one story that fans have been interested in, many are still wondering who Darwin's biological parents are, given the Amazing World of Gumball Season 4, Episode 20, The Origins. However, developing such an episode for the series has been proven difficult to the creators. It's an episode we've been trying to write for at least 4 seasons or something, Beauclet recalled. We never land on anything that's emotionally great, so I think until we have the right idea for it, we're gonna save this for later. So there's still hope for Darwin's real parents to make an appearance on the big screen and put this mystery to bed once and for all. But either way, we know that Darwin's real parents are Nicole and Richard Watterson. If throughout the years, Gumball has gone through a lot of changes with this persona, and quite frankly, these changes would most likely make the classic Gumball absolutely hate the modern Gumball we have today. So today, we're gonna be going over every reason why the classic Gumball would hate the modern Gumball. Let's start off by building a profile and figuring out what truly made the classic Gumball mad, as a lot of episodes show this really well, with our first of our examples being seen in the third. The episode starts with there only being one day left before school starts, and we see Gumball and Darwin try to find something fun to do. But every game feels old and boring. Due to this, Gumball suddenly worries that maybe the problem isn't the games at all, and maybe they're just tired of each other, so they decide they need a third best friend. Their search goes terribly, with weird, annoying, and creepy classmates making everything more awkward, until Tobias finally ends up stealing Darwin away after Gumball literally pays him to be their friend. Feeling left out and jealous, Gumball goes on a wild mission across town to get Darwin back, crashing through cement, flying down hills, and causing mayhem along the way. In the end, Darwin admits that he misses Gumball too, and the two happily reunite while making it very clear that no one else can replace their friendship. Now, in this episode, we clearly see Gumball suffer from jealousy and be mad that Darwin was hanging out with someone else that's not him.
He's a really cool guy! Well, he's okay, but What do you mean he's okay? He's the best guy ever! It's not like you've played with him your whole life. I might as well have. I feel like I've known him forever.
This trait is really good in a way from classic Gumball, as he genuinely cared about Darwin and wanted him all to himself, due to their insanely strong bond, which in that case, we put on the list that Gumball would be triggered by jealousy. And let's just say later in this video, this completely changes for the worst. But another very interesting trait that would cause the old Gumball to get mad is actually laziness, which we see in the episode The Laziest. This episode starts with Nicole leaving Richard alone to do chores, which he immediately looks for a way out of working and tricks Gumball and Darwin into taking the trash out for him.
How about you little bank robbers take your loot to the safe house? Huh?
The boys get mad and challenge their dad to a lazy-off to see who truly is the laziest person in the family. But Richard easily keeps up while they struggle through sugar rushes and failed attempts to recruit the legendary Lazy Larry. After Larry completely falls back into his old lazy habits and still fails to show up, Gumball and Darwin are forced to battle Richard themselves in an absurd competition of doing absolutely nothing. In the end, Richard cleverly pretends he spent the whole day cleaning, so when Nicole gets home, Gumball and Darwin end up stuck doing all the chores, while Richard relaxes on the couch like he planned all along. Now, in the episode, we clearly see that Gumball dislikes the fact that Richard is quite literally a lazy bum, so he essentially tried to get somebody to out-lazy him, in hopes to have Richard no longer be lazy and not have Gumball and Darwin do anything for him. So yeah, this trait definitely triggered Gumball back then. And it's honestly believable, as classic Gumball was known as a character who was genuinely active and wanted to do stuff, but unfortunately this will fade away. But not only do we see Gumball more active back then, we also see him have more overall respect back then, and we see this in the pressure. The episode kicks off with a group of girls bragging about fake boyfriends in Molly's treehouse, and when Masami randomly claims Darwin is hers, things spiral out of control. Darwin panics and spends the entire day avoiding Masami, while Gumball keeps embarrassing himself whenever Penny is around because he secretly likes her. And after several failed escape plans, awkward misunderstandings, and terrible advice, Darwin finally agrees to meet Masami at a treehouse, while Gumball hopes it will also be his chance to finally kiss Penny. Everything goes wrong when Tobias and Banana Joe accidentally chop the whole treehouse down, causing Gumball and Darwin to accidentally kiss each other instead, while thinking that they just kissed the girls they like.
That was amazing! Kissing Penny was like being run over by a unicorn. And kissing Masami wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
If you didn't already notice, in the episode, Gumball was acting shy and wasn't really being the biggest fan of social pressure and emotional intelligence, even though he wanted to kiss Penny, which we actually see be a pattern a lot throughout seasons 1 and 2 of the show, before Gumball and Penny actually got together, which was actually a really respectful trait of classic Gumball that unfortunately died down. However, we can now put high pressure on the list of things that triggered classic Gumball. Now, while all of these things seemed pretty valid and made classic Gumball seem like a reasonable person, modern Gumball seems to go against everything we went over in a way, starting around season 5, which is when people consider to be the end of classic Gumball. But let's start with the first thing that old Gumball hated: which was jealousy. And we would first see him become what he hated in the BFFs. In this episode, Darwin answers the door one day and is greeted with this weird little creature that he instantly dislikes, only to find out it's actually Gumball's old best friend, Fuzzy from Minnesota. Gumball is super excited to reconnect with him, but Darwin gets jealous fast and becomes convinced that Fuzzy is hiding something shady. Gumball angrily leaves with him on a ridiculously long trip to Minnesota, dragging themselves through deserts, mountains, and forests just to get there. Once they arrive, Fuzzy suddenly goes full-on psycho, forcing Gumball into toddler clothes and acting completely unhinged until Darwin swoops in with a shovel to save him. Gumball and Darwin barely escape Fuzzy in the woods before Fuzzy accidentally knocks himself out, and Gumball and Darwin decide that they've had enough adventure and just head home dreaming about tacos instead. Now, this episode was actually interesting, as the roles would actually switch compared to the third. And instead of Gumball being jealous, Darwin was the jealous one, which shows how far Gumball's character development has come, as he was now hanging out with other people over Darwin, while this supposed friend seemed insanely shady the whole time. So it's clear that this trait would most likely be one of the main reasons why classic Gumball would want to punch modern Gumball in the face. But remember that in addition to this, Gumball also hates when people are lazy and don't do what they need to do. Yeah, well, for some reason, Gumball had a sudden switch in mentality between the years, as in the vegging, we literally see him become Richard, but honestly, 10 times worse. The episode starts with Gumball waking up super excited because he and Darwin finally have the whole day planned to do absolutely nothing except lie around and watch TV.
I meant today is the day we veg out.
You don't want to do anything at all today?
No, I'm on strike. It's like if the tiniest thing happens in this town, we end up running a gosh darn marathon.
Due to this, they go completely overboard, preparing for maximum laziness, setting up snacks, games, diapers, and even weird tricks, so they never have to stand up. No matter what crazy disaster happens outside, meteors, mutants, aliens, the apocalypse, and even creepy horror villains crawling out of the TV, the two just kept ignoring it so they could continue vegging out. Things only get harder when the TV breaks. The world practically starts ending, and even their family gets stuck dangling off a bridge. But Gumball and Darwin still try to solve everything while staying seated. By the end of the day, after surviving non-stop chaos without giving up their lazy mission, they settle back onto the couch and completely ignore a mysterious message from the future because they got distracted by candy in the cushions. Now obviously, anyone wants a day in their life where they can do nothing. And believe me, I do too. However, Gumball was taking the laziness concept way too far, as he quite literally didn't want to stand up and do anything. Just like Richard didn't want to get up and take out the trash just a few years prior. So this little idea of Gumball just shines light on how much he changed throughout the years from his classic self. Now, so far, we've been mainly seeing Gumball from Season 5 and Season 6 commit what his old self hated. But what if I told you that he started giving off hints of how his modern self would look like all the way back in Season 2? We would see this in The Flower, where Gumball would start going completely against the social pressure that he used to hate, and would unleash it all on Penny. In the episode, we see Gumball spending his lunch break watching Penny cheer from afar, but things go downhill fast when he sees Leslie comforting her and instantly gets consumed by jealousy. His jealousy basically takes over his body, making him act completely insane by attacking Leslie, trying to frame him for theft, and ruining every attempt to make peace with him. Even after Gumball tries to calm him down, his jealous side secretly sets up traps for Leslie and nearly gets him eaten alive by bugs in the park. Eventually, Gumball becomes so unhinged that Carrie and the others literally perform an exorcism to pull the jealousy out of him, only for the jealous spirit to go wild and possess everyone else. The chaos finally stops when Penny reveals she and Leslie are actually cousins, instantly curing Gumball's jealousy and making the evil spirit disappear for good.
Ah, Penny! You gotta break up with Leslie! What are you talking about? We're not dating, we're cousins!
Wait,
Did you just say he was your cousin?
Well, duh. Everyone knows.
Well, duh. I didn't.
Clearly, this episode displayed a lot of jealousy from Gumball, which was a trait he would also suffer from a lot with his classic self, like we went over earlier. However, we would also see Gumball be very pushy in this episode towards Leslie, Carrie, and Penny by spying on them, pressuring Leslie, and so much more. It is weird, as just a season before, Gumball was pretty much against this behavior. However, as early as season 2, we would start seeing this from Gumball, and it would become an inconsistent but frequent pattern that we would see from him. Well, that right there is why classic Gumball would probably despise modern Gumball. On the surface, Gumball may seem like a wholesome, innocent show made for kids. However, if you dive deep into Gumball episodes, you'll notice a small detail within Elmore Junior High that looks and feels eerie that literally everyone ignores. And that detail is none other than the super mysterious "help me" message that can be seen in a lot of the Gumball episodes, of graffiti art of a rat with skull teeth, smiling with a bubble box above his head with the words "help me." Now, some of you may not have even known about this, and honestly, I don't blame you. This is due to the fact that the message is actually really hidden within the show. However, it's featured in literally all the episodes, and the way that they do this is that the message is literally hidden in the season 1 through 6 Gumball opening intro ever since day 1 of the show. Let's whip it into slow motion and really analyze the intro. During the second part of the intro, we see Gumball, Nicole, and Darwin do a little spin move, basically showing that they were inside of a locker. However, once it zooms out of the locker, we can actually see the "help me" message graffitied onto the locker. Along with this, we see another creepy message next to it, with some weird looking figure with a text bubble that says "I'm watching you, boy." Now, that's really creepy. However, let's not forget about this symbol, as it'll play a big part later in this video throughout the theory portion. However, now let's take a look at some other appearances that we've seen of this "help me" message. Basically, in the intro, we would see this message officially appear in season 3, episode 1, the 3rd, in which we would see it on the door of a stall in the boys' bathroom at Elmore Junior High.
I think we lost him.
Now, this appearance of the message was way more visible compared to the intro message. However, this doesn't change the fact that the typical Gumball viewer wouldn't notice this either way. But we're not done yet, as jumping over a few episodes in season 1, all the way to episode 32, which is the Meddler, we actually see this message appear 3 different times in one episode. Starting off in the cafeteria, where we would see this message twice. Once on the wall towards the left side, and another above the green sticker on the glass of the cafeteria.
That's enough, okay? That's enough! I'm my own man now. I make my own decisions, and I don't need you babying me anymore.
Along with this, we would also see the message on one of the lockers in the episode. Clearly, this isn't some random graffiti art someone drew for fun, due to the fact that this is basically everywhere. And along with this, at one point, it's even seen on the front doors of the school. But now that we went over some of its appearances, we can notice that there's a pattern with this drawing. It mainly appears on lockers, bathrooms, the cafeteria, and in front of the school. And honestly, these key details can bring up a lot of rumors on who drew this. But the most likely answer was that it was somebody who goes to Elmore Junior High. But who? Well, there's one theory that many fans actually believe to be the real reason why this is here, and it takes us all the way back to the Meddler. As we all know, throughout most of the episode, we see Darwin smiling really hard while Nicole was embarrassing Gumball at school in order to not hurt her feelings. And many fans depict that Darwin drew this rat smiling really hard in order to ask for help, as at one point in the episode, he was not able to stop smiling. Now, while this theory makes sense to an extent, this drawing was featured ever since day 1 of the Gumball intro, so it most likely wasn't caused by the events that occurred in the Meddler. But we aren't done yet, as we still haven't tried depicting who this rat is. And if you're a Gumball fan, you probably know that the only rat in the show is Louis Watterson. Now, Grandpa Louis drawing this at Elmore Junior High wouldn't make sense at all, because at the end of the day, he's a senior citizen, so he has no reason to be committing a crime at a middle school. However, there are always the odds that he drew it back in the day when he was in middle school, and potentially needed some sort of unknown help. However, this theory isn't really that good, so we're just solely judging based off who is saying "help me." Clearly, all of these theories are diving really deep, And with that, it also means that we should probably cover some of the more smaller likely theories, along with analyzing what's even there. Let's start off with figuring out why this drawing is in such specific places. Like we went over earlier, the message is displayed in bathrooms, the cafeteria, lockers, and the front entrance. And all of these places carry different meanings, starting with the bathroom, which is obviously a somewhat private area, as people take care of their business there and whatnot. However, in Gumball, there's always been a pattern of characters who go to the bathroom when they're sad, and typically cry in there. We would see this a lot with Alan in the show, especially in The Storm.
Alan,
Is that you, buddy? Are you crying?
what does it sound like I'm doing?
I don't know, man. You're a bit of a biological mystery.
Now, this detail can mean a lot, as first of all, the message is quite literally in front of Gumball's eyes in this moment, and he lacks any notice of it, which gives a very creepy vibe to this message. But since people don't like to let their emotions out in the bathrooms, we can infer that someone might have drawn this due to the fact that they actually needed real help and were going through stuff, hence why they were in the bathroom crying. This theory is definitely one of the more likely ones due to how much sense it would make, but the same can be said for the cafeteria, front entrance, and lockers too. And quite frankly, these have more simple answers due to the fact that they could very well just be jokes. I say this because we can likely assume that somebody drew this in the cafeteria to potentially ask for help due to how bad the food was, or drew it on the lockers or the front entrance to ask for help with the school or something simple like that. But while these theories aren't anything too big, and honestly the theories that are most likely true, we still haven't talked about the more disturbing side of this, which is how this drawing is quite literally never erased. As we all know, in basically every school, janitors or staff members usually erase any sort of graffiti, especially if it's inappropriate or alarming, which is obviously the logical thing to do. However, the fact that this message never gets erased just makes things so much weirder, which brings us to the big league of theories, starting off with the void theory. Now, as we all know, in the Gumball universe, there's something called the void, and in the void, we see people that are forgotten in Elmore get sent there completely out of their control, with Molly and Rob being great examples of this.
Some kind of a torso? No, think about it. Something that used to be here at school, but now it's gone. Never mind. Look at this! There's no 116! There's a locker missing!
As you saw, whenever somebody gets sent to the void, everything that has ties to them gets erased, from lockers to videos of them, and even erased from the memory of people, which would actually make sense for this drawing, as someone, even potentially Molly, could have drawn this before being kidnapped and sent to the void. But things are about to get scary. I say this because I can prove my theory even more going back to the dress. This is due to the fact that at one point in this episode, we see half of the message gone, as one of the lockers disappeared.
That was weird.
Now, this is getting deep, as this episode may have secretly confirmed this theory all along. And honestly, knowing how big of a part the void is to Gumball lore just makes this theory make the most sense out of all of them, which is clearly a shocker. And to add even more onto this, the part where the characters never seem to acknowledge this message actually makes even more sense, due to the fact that when the characters are typically sent to the void, basically everyone in Elmore does not acknowledge them whatsoever. So them never pointing out this drawing in any way basically adds up thanks to this theory. But this doesn't only mean that the character was taken by the void, and there's actually another possibility that would make a lot of sense. And this possibility is how this deleted locker belonged to a character that appeared in the 2008 Gumball pilot and never ended up making it into the actual show. Now, in the pilot episode, we would see a few characters who could have potentially been victims to this, and some of these characters were a character named Fragile, some purple-looking person, Splatty, and Snowman. Obviously, none of these characters are confirmed to be the ones who drew this message, as it's clearly a theory, but in a way, this theory makes sense, as all of these characters could have also been victims of the void, hence why they never made it into the real show, as the void most likely captured them before they were able to make it into the show. Well, we have gone over many theories by now, however, none of these truly answer the question of what the real meaning of this message is. And well, the most truthful truthful answer to this is not based on the lore of the show. Rather, it's simply based on the writers of the show, and that this message is most likely a really big Easter egg that Ben Boclet and the other Gumball writers thought of before producing the show. And this would make the most sense due to the hidden and eerie nature of it. However, this Easter egg has not really appeared in the modernized season 7 and 8 of the show, which helps us assume even more that this was just an old running Easter egg that the writers of the show made to see how many people would actually notice it, and unfortunately, it most likely has zero meaning to it. However, of course, it would always be cool to see an actual episode made about this message, and potentially solve our huge question of what this mysterious message means. But if you want me to cover more Gumball theories, make sure to subscribe, and click the video on screen. I'm sure you'll love it.